And we are live on YouTube. Good afternoon, everybody. This is another edition of RAW Sport Quaran-Stream covering the Bundesliga in the style of RAW Sport Super Saturday if COVID-19 hadn't hit. Josh Sim is currently in Leamington Spa working on what he tells me is the last of his essays. He'll be watching. He can't be on the show this week. He'll be on the next stream if we do one next weekend. I'm his replacement, Joe Spagnoli, Deputy Head of RAW Sport. And this afternoon we're going to be covering 5 games at the moment, but 6 games today in the Bundesliga. Of course, returning early after the COVID-19 pandemic conditions were lifted, and also talking one game in La Liga following its return as Espanyol currently face Deportivo Alaves and are leading 2-0 at home. I'm going to bring in the first of our co-presenters today, Luke James, the editor of RAW Sport. Luke, you've chosen an interesting game today. 6 games to choose in the Bundesliga today, and you've chosen 18th place, so that's bottom for those of you who aren't aware, SC Paderborn versus 17th place Werder Bremen in what we're both describing as a must-win for both of these teams.
Yeah, they both desperately need to win. So Paderborn go into this kind of 8 points adrift of the relegation playoff place on 20 points. Werder Bremen 5 points further ahead on 25 points. They are really last chance saloon if they're going to survive automatically, to be fair. Starting couple of minutes, it's been interesting. It's actually been Paderborn who have been the better team, which isn't encouraging at all for Bremen, considering they really desperately do need the win. In terms of the lineups, there's been quite a surprising change for Werder Bremen, the travelling side. Florian has shifted to a 3 at the back. So he's gone with Pavlenka in goal, Velchkovic, Vogt and Moisander are his 3 defenders. So Vogt dropping in from defensive midfield. Then he's pushed Salati into wing back, Gustafsson on the other side with a midfield 2 of Klassen and Eggestein. Behind the striker is a Sacco, and then his 2 are Rasica and Josh Sargent.
Milot Rashica, of course, being linked with an awful lot of clubs in the Bundesliga, and as I discovered last night when talking to RAW Sports resident Brighton expert Carl Henningway, Brighton and Hove Albion is a club he's linked with for a move over the summer, irrespective, I suppose, of whether or not Werder Bremen do go down. We were talking about this just before the stream started. Paderborn, surprisingly good form for a team that are clearly in well over their heads in the Bundesliga. 4 draws in their last 5 games, including the game that you covered last week against Rasenballsport Leipzig away from home. How do you see this game going? Because Werder Bremen, for all their quality and all their star players, you've personally highlighted Kevin Vogt in recent weeks. They've lost 3 of the 6 games since coming back, and they haven't actually won at their own stadium either since the return of Bundesliga football. How do you see today going for them?
It really is last chance saloon for Werder Bremen. If you look at the fixtures after this, they've got Bayern Munich at home next week, followed up by Mainz away and Köln at home on the final game of the season. So if they don't win this, they're going to be deep in trouble. And it's interesting they've made the change because they had been playing with kind of a 4-4-2 diamond. So essentially the only difference is your 2 fullbacks are pushed higher to try and get more in possession, and Vogt is going to drop between the 2 centre-halves more, which is typically what they do in possession anyway. But in terms of the defensive shape, that's a little bit different for them. It's going to be interesting because if Born are able to exert pressure on Werder Bremen in the wide areas, they've got Antwi, Jeji on one side and Evans on the other side. It could be a situation where the 2 fullbacks get pushed back anyway, and then you've got a flat back 5 in a must-win game. It's a little bit too defensive kind of on paper, but it'll be interesting to see kind of how the game moves forward.
There's always the chance that Kofeld, as indeed he has done in recent weeks, is using Vogt as sort of a more advanced centre-back, if that makes sense, using him sort of as a DM that's even deeper. I think of a good example actually would have been John Stones at the 2018 World Cup. No, I'm not trying to claim that Kevin Vogt is the superior playmaker over John Stones. But of course, we know Augustinsson and Gebre Selassie, decent fullbacks. I'm actually really surprised at how bad Werder Bremen's goal difference is. I'd only checked earlier, they've got 10. The goal difference is 10 lower for Werder Bremen than it is for Paderborn. They take each other on at the Bentele Arena in North Rhine-Westphalia this afternoon. Just a little point as well. Another inclination for Werder Bremen to go for this game. Dusseldorf, their closest rivals in the relegation race, at the Esprit Arena, host Dortmund this afternoon. You would assume on a regular day that will not go so well for them. So it is an opportunity for Werder Bremen to leapfrog them out of relegation and into the relegation playoff place. Luke James, we will come back to you when action happens in this game because it sounds like it's going to. I'm going to join the stream. The other Luke, this isn't going to be confusing for viewers whatsoever. Luke Edwards, former station manager of RAW 1251 AM. a.m. You are currently watching a slightly higher game, but also not one of some of the big hitters in the Bundesliga. Bruno Labbadia's Hertha Berlin versus Adi Hutter's Eintracht Frankfurt, two teams defined by inconsistency. Have you got the lineups for these games? Because you've got another game.
I do. Yeah, I've been paying attention. I'm paying attention mostly to the Spagnoli game at the minute, but I'll go through what I expect from this game. So quite a bit of big team news coming out from Hertha. Hertha have actually been low-key consistent under Labbadia.
Yes.
Since his appointment, they've actually performed pretty well. They narrowly lost to Dortmund last week, but overall, they've had a really good time of it since lockdown ended. They start today with I'm assuming a 4-2-3-1 formation. They've actually tweaked things a little bit. Which might see them move to more of a 4-4-2 diamond formation. But they've gone for Rune Jarstein in goal, Peter Pekarik, Dedrick Boyata, Jordan Taruna Riga, and Marvin Plattenhardt make up the back four. Fairly standard for them. I've then gone for a midfield pivot of Marco Grujic and Per Schillian Shelbred. It's then a three in front of them of Arne Meyer, Christoph Piontek, who I think will be featuring on the left today, with Vladimir Darida, the absolute engine. I'll go through some stats on him later. Supporting Vedad Ibišević, the veteran striker up front. And then I've got Augsburg written down. Frankfurt is going to be Kevin Trapp in goal, with a back three of David Abraham, Makoto Hasebe, and Evan Ndichka. It's then a midfield four of Danny Da Costa on the right, Philip Kostic on the left, and a midfield two of Dominic Kor and Lucas Toro, with Jibril Sal, Daichi Kamada supporting Bas Dost. I think that's what they've gone for today. But yeah, it's looking like it on paper probably quite an even game, but I think on form you'd probably expect Hertha to be slight favourites. They've performed absolutely fantastically since Labbadia has come back in. So I think you would go into this game expecting they'll be able to take the win.
I mean, I was doing some research on Bruno Labbadia earlier. Of course, he was the manager for VfL Wolfsburg during the 18-19 season, decided to leave at the end of the year, not take another job.
Yep.
Kind of an impressive hire for Hertha, no doubt, buoyed by their recent takeover, I think 49% of the team with a very rich investment. 3 wins, one of which was on the road at Hoffenheim, 3-0, a 4-0 smashing of Union Berlin at the Olympiastadion, and then a 2-0 win against Augsburg. 9 goals over 3 games. Like you say, they only narrowly lost against Dortmund. That's their one loss in the last 5 games. They've also drawn away at RB Leipzig. Is it just me, or has Bruno Labbadia turned Hertha Berlin into the good team that they were supposed to be throughout this season?
The key thing that we've seen with Hertha is that they didn't have a very good start to the season. But I think it's a combination of two things. It's not just Labbadia coming in. I think what he's done is actually brought a philosophy and an actual bit of team cohesion. Klinsmann just had, he had a lot of good individuals, but he couldn't do anything with them. Whereas Labadia's got all of these players and he's actually putting them into a system, into this 4-2-3-1 system, which makes them A, hard to beat, but B, gets the best out of players like, namely Mateusz Cunha, who's on the bench today. He picked up a concussion a couple of weeks ago after he supposedly bashed heads with Marvin Plattenhardt. He was out for 2 weeks. But he's back on the bench today. But he's been an absolute revelation since he's come back in. He's kind of garnered a lot of interest from Premier League fans who have kind of been watching this player who's so entertaining to watch. He's very good on the ball. He's a good passer, and he's one of those players who likes to get on the ball and make things happen, which is quite exciting to watch. But what we're seeing with Hertha is that they've kind of got this side that Labbadia's been able to glue together with a philosophy that they're good on the counter-attack, but they're also creative and it gets the best out of the players in their squad. And that should see them. I think with the form they've got, there's no reason why they can't go and even challenge for top 4 next year. I think they've got all the players at their disposal and they're performing exceptionally well.
And let's not forget, of course, they have got Lucas Toussaint, probably one of the most impressive DMs in the European top 5 leagues this year. They couldn't get him in January from Olympique Lyon, but he will definitely be joining them at the end of the season. For me, that's their most impressive signing of the year. I've just had a look at the formation. This is just Google messing us around as per usual. It says 2 strikers up front, Vedad Ibišević alongside Christoph Piontek. Piontek's looked kind of okay in the last few weeks. He hasn't exactly hit the heights that he did at Cracovia or Genoa, but a decent start to his Bundesliga career post-lockdown, I suppose. As for Ibišević, I mean, we've talked about him on the Eurozone Football podcast, plug, a few times before. One of the mainstays of the Bundesliga over the last 10 years. Good chance that he gets on the score sheet today. I was also doing a little bit of research into Eintracht Frankfurt. The highest scorer in the Bundesliga this year between either of these two teams Andre Silva is on the bench this afternoon for Eintracht Frankfurt.
Yes, do you know who the joint? Actually, no, because there's another one who's also on the bench for Eintracht Frankfurt. It's Martin Hinteregger, who is a centre back, and he scored 8 goals this year in the Bundesliga.
Defender scoring 8 goals. I mean, Trent Alexander-Arnold, who the hell even do you think you are? Most attacking
he gets them all from corners. He's an absolute giant. He's brilliant, but I don't know why. I don't know quite why he's not starting today. But every time I've watched him, I've thought he's a really good player. So yeah, and he just seems to have a bit of like Martin Skirtle syndrome, where he's just able to score an absurd amount of goals from centre back in a season.
I mean, judging from the other centre backs, of course, you've got Ndicka, one of like a really impressive young centre back. Makota Hasabi, veteran. You know what you're getting with him. Very similar to Kevin. Yeah, very similar to Kevin Vogt, actually, in the Werder Bremen game. Has the potential to move into DM, as indeed he did last year. I considered him for team of the season. As for David Abraham, if you want someone to run into the opposition manager, as indeed he did against the Freiburg manager earlier this year, that is an option. We'll stick with you just for a little bit longer because, of course, La Liga has returned to our screens. Let's celebrate that. Yeah, get the ticker up. We've got one game on at the moment, of course, staggered across the afternoon. I believe we've got 4 games in the Spanish top division. Bottom of the table, RC de Español hosting Deportivo Alavés at the Cornellà El Prat Stadium. This was not the way we expected the game to go. We don't need to go through lineups, Luke, but Espanyol 2 goals up over an Alavés side who currently have not registered a single shot in the game. What the hell has happened?
Well, it's not particularly expected, but Espanyol have actually been pretty good since the turn of the year, relative to how they were at the start.
Yeah.
Like they had a torrid start to the season. They were competing with, they were trying to prioritize the Europa League quite a lot, and that showed. They managed to top their Europa League group and go through and were knocked out in the round of 32 against Wolves. But Espanyol, they had a really difficult start to the season. They just weren't able to get things back to where they were. They lost their manager over the summer. He then took that was Ruby, who took their top goal scorer from last season, Borja Iglesias, to Real Betis with him. So it was a real summer of transition. They've experienced with so many different managers. They had Pablo Machín, the former Girona and Sevilla manager, was in charge for a little bit. He only got 1 win, was sacked. And they brought in Abelardo, who's seemingly done a pretty decent job so far. They were able to bring in Raul de Tomas, the striker from Benfica, former Real Madrid player. They brought him in for £20 million in January. He's really changed things. He scored 4 goals in his first 4 games before he picked up an injury. He's come back and he seems to have this real energy in this side that he galvanizes them whenever he's on the pitch. He's a player who likes to get in behind defenders, and that's quite exciting to watch. So he adds a new dimension to the Espanyol side. So having him back in the team is a massive plus. So, we're saying, just back to your point, Joe, you were saying that this isn't really a surprise, or you thought this was a surprise to see Espanyol winning. I don't think this is much of a surprise. I actually think they needed lockdown to kind of refresh, because they've got the players. This outside Rosa Thomas, I'm a massive fan of Jonathan Clary. I think he's a really good footballer. Who's the left winger? I can't. His left wing is massively impressive.
The left winger today, Mbaba.
Mbaba,
who's got a brace of assists today. They brought him in January as well, alongside, just to quickly mention him, because he was a team of the season contender for me in La Liga last year at Getafe. Leandro Cabrera, who of course tested positive for COVID-19 in March. By all accounts, he's had a very impressive afternoon in the Spanish top division. So we'll keep you up to date with this. The game is very, very close to its finish. Only 10 minutes of regulation left. Of course, the game was defined in the first 20 minutes when Fernando Pacheco, actually one of the better Spanish goalkeepers currently going, making a ridiculous mistake, saving the ball outside the box after being given a yellow card in the first 5 minutes. And after that, well, it took Espanyol a while, but relatively speaking, the floodgates have opened. Goals for Bernardo Espinosa and the Chinese international Wu Lei at Espanyol. Thank you very much, Luke, covering 2 games. Massive try hard. We have 1 goal in another game to report already. VfL Wolfsburg have taken the lead at the Volkswagen Arena against SC Freiburg. Wout Weghorst, the Dutch international, is the striker there. I'll update the ticker for you in a moment. But we've got the other games to go through just quickly this afternoon. Fortuna Düsseldorf, as I've already mentioned, hosting Borussia Dortmund at the Esprit Arena. Currently goalless. We'd expect Borussia Dortmund, especially if they have any aspiration of the Bundesliga title, to go for this game and get a win on the road. FC Köln hosting Union Berlin over on the Rhineland. Köln is currently goalless. Very, very similar positions in the table. Union Berlin, again, trying to avoid relegation in what has been a fairly impressive season from the second division. As we've already talked about, Hertha and Eintracht and Paderborn and Werder Bremen. The last game, of course, Wolfsburg versus Freiburg. Wolfsburg going for European football, currently 6th. 2 points and a game in hand over TSG Hoffenheim, who of course sacked their manager Alfred Schroeder in the wake of their 2-2 defeat on the road to Fortuna Düsseldorf last weekend that I covered. There are a lot of people predicting that Alfred Schroeder would win the sack race in German football this year. He's actually made it an awful long way after Julian Nagelsmann left for Leipzig last summer. Nonetheless, that road has come to an end for Hoffenheim changing their manager with their European football ambitions. Well, I'm just going to bring Luke James into the stream without warning him whatsoever. The relegation 6-pointer times a million. How's it currently going? Are Paderborn still on top?
It's been really even so far. And one of the things that's been quite interesting, again, not on the pitch, but off the pitch, Florian Kohfeldt over recent weeks has been criticised the last couple of weekends for telling the bench for Werder Bremen to be loud. And once again, they have been loud and kind of in the referee's face. So that's something to keep an eye on. In terms of the play, it's kind of going as I expected. It's such an obvious relegation 6-point battle, and it's so clear that both teams desperately need the points. In terms of possession, I think Werder Bremen are probably edging it. They've had a couple of set-piece opportunities, but the delivery's not been too good so far. Paderborn have looked good on the counter-attack. They've been getting the ball out wide into Evans and Antwi Adeji, and they've had some joy there too, so it will be interesting as we go forward into the latter stages. Augustinsson, the left-back for Werder Bremen, is already on a yellow card. He picked up one about 2 or 3 minutes ago for quite a bad tackle on Paderborn's right back, Laurent Jans. It was just a late challenge. It was very high into Paderborn's territory. It was a really silly foul to give away, but that's something to keep an eye on as well. Because obviously, given the system they're playing, if Paderborn are now able to exploit the space over on the left-hand side, it could cause him some problems.
And a lot of the counter-attacking goals that Paderborn have scored this year in very surprising games, think about the 3-3 against Borussia Dortmund months ago now, a lot of those attacks do come from out wide. Of course, Werder Bremen do have another player that they could bring on if they needed to bring off the left-back, of course, Marco Friedl. I believe he's a former Bayern Munich youngster. They could bring him on, arguably not a first-choice option, but with, I believe, a maximum of 5 substitutions per team in these COVID-19 adjusted Bundesliga conditions. Maybe that's a change they can make in the second half. But a competitive game so far, you say?
It is a competitive game. Some breaking news, though. We've just had a penalty awarded for Werder Bremen. Jordan was breaking down the right-hand side. It was a really good play as well, really good footwork from the American international. He's cut inside, the ball's bouncing, running into the penalty area where he's come up against Collins. He's trying to flick the ball over Collins' kind of knee, fire. It's bounced off of Collins' fire, and then he's used his hand to try and basically whack the ball away. So it was a definite penalty. There's been some complaints, but we're in the build-up now to it.
Well, let's just go through it.
Yeah.
So the penalty will be taken by Josh Sargent.
Not entirely sure. Man was around the ball at the moment. It's just the referee kind of holding it at the minute. I think they might be doing a VAR check. But it's been an impressive performance again from Sargent. He's someone I talk about quite a lot just because kind of I find his career interesting. But he has such a high work rate off the ball, and for the last couple of weeks, Werder Bremen haven't created many chances, even though they've got a good team and they've got the pieces to be a good team in the Bundesliga. And it's just the case that they needed to find a way to get them better service. It's Rasucha who's going to take the penalty, and he's just about to step up. Now, it's a save. He went low to the keeper's left, and it was a really, really good save. Brilliant save from the goalkeeper. And that's exactly what Werder Bremen didn't need. It's now pinball within the 18-yard box, and now Paderborn will look to get it away. It's bounced back in towards Sargent, and now Paderborn still haven't cleared that line. So it's really quite last-ditch defending, and now it's calmed down towards the halfway line with Werder Bremen in possession. That's a huge opportunity to miss. You can't, on first viewing, you can't really knock the penalty. It was a strong shot towards the bottom left corner, but it was a great save. My only criticism, it was an okay height for the goalkeeper to save. It wasn't quite on the floor. It was kind of mid-height. But yeah, that's a huge opportunity missed for Werder Bremen, and they've whacked. Oh my God, it's a goal. Okay, wow. So that's David Klassen with a absolutely brilliant header. The ball was crossed in. I believe it was probably by Selassie or Egenstein. It's come from the Werder Bremen right-hand side. It was a really, really good looping cross from Midway within the Paderborn half, Klaassen unmarked sends a looping header over the head of Zingerl, and it's 1-0 to Werder Bremen.
Moments after Leopold Zingerla makes a save that we weren't expecting, Davy Klaassen with a shot that we weren't expecting. Of course, the former Everton player who disappointed massively in the Premier League, finally finding his feet in the Bundesliga to put Werder Bremen 1-0 up away from home against Paderborn. Now, in the wake of this, obviously, we know that Werder Bremen have a personnel advantage on paper. Is the game plan for Werder Bremen now hold back, or do you think they need another goal against a counter-attacking side like Paderborn?
I think the best thing for Werder Bremen to do now, and I've watched both of these teams quite a lot recently. I think Werder Bremen are better when they're in possession, when they're out of possession. They're not a bad defensive team, but the last couple of weeks, so Werder Bremen last weekend conceded really, really late in their game, and it was just a case where they kept backing off, they kept retreating into their own penalty area, and in the end, it really cost them a point in that one. If they want to, I think they need another goal to answer your question. They need to keep going at them, and they've looked quite good. Asako is quite hard working, kind of behind the two strikers. He's been playing well. Eggestein and Klaassen, on paper, they shouldn't be in the position they are. They've got enough quality. So, to be honest, if Werder Bremen are going to keep this up, I'd suggest they probably need another goal.
Luckily, though, they do have the firepower on the pitch. Of course, we've already talked about Josh Sargent getting that penalty, which, granted, Milot Rashica was saved by the goalkeeper Zengerle. But a good start for Werder Bremen away from home, a win that they absolutely need. Thank you very much, Luke James. We'll come back to you in a few minutes. No other goals to report in the 5 current Bundesliga fixtures. We'll also do a preview later of the big game for today, Bayern Munich versus Borussia Mönchengladbach, probably the biggest game of the weekend in all of, probably European football at the Allianz Arena. Come back to Luke Edwards on stream at the moment. We haven't got any goals at the Olympia Stadion so far, but we're into the last 6 minutes or so of the game at the RCDE Stadium. Espanyol versus Deportivo Alavés seems to have calmed down a lot. I'm just checking the possession stats. It's funny that you say Alavés sit back, no pressure. Just 35% possession on the ball today.
It's interesting because I think they would have wanted to get at Espanyol a little bit more in the second half, but they just haven't had the players on the pitch to be able to do it. Down to 10 men, it just restricts them that little bit more. It's been a day to forget for them, to be honest. I think Alavés, their season's largely over anyway. They're not going to get relegated. They're slightly too far away from the trailing pack to have to worry about that too much. I think that's all they'll really care about. They came into the season really thinking if they could get survival, that would be the first target, and then maybe push towards the top 10. Reality is, with the strength of the top 10 in La Liga this year, they were never really going to get near it, no matter how hard they tried. So, there'll just be a matter for them of keeping 13th place and just making sure that they mathematically qualify for the league next year, which they should absolutely do. And they've had a good season, but this game is just a complete write-off for them the moment Pacheco got sent off.
Yeah, and a rare instance of Deportivo Alavés' let's be honest, very successful grounded system under Asier Haritano. The 4-4-2 that we've seen worked very well for the last couple of years. One of the best defensive sides in La Liga, certainly mid-table. Not paying off for them today, although you could probably label that more at Pacheco than Haritano himself. Have you got any updates from the game at Hertha versus Eintracht Frankfurt? Of course.
I've actually switched over to that game because I thought, well, there's no point watching Alavés versus Espanyol now because, let's face it, Espanyol probably going to win the game.
No shots for Alavés still.
No, exactly. I think the difference would be maybe Espanyol, their desperation would probably be to try and get another goal because the goal differences at that end of the table are quite close. And there's every chance it could come down to it because there's, I actually wrote on this recently, there's about 6 teams that could feasibly get relegated from La Liga this year. It's going to come down to the smallest detail, I'm sure. So they'll probably be looking for an extra goal just to kind of boost that goal difference before they go into the rest of the season because they've got a few more clutch matches to complete. I say this, Ibišević has just missed a very good opportunity coming from a free kick for Hertha Berlin. His first real chance of the match, Kostic had a free kick about 20 yards out that went relatively close, but ultimately didn't trouble goalkeeper Jarstein in the goal for Hertha Berlin. Ball's just coming from a free kick, goes over to the back post towards Boyata, who manages to knock the ball back across goal. And Ibišević is stood roughly between the penalty spot and the 6-yard box. And he kind of claws at it with his right foot, but he doesn't generate enough connection on the ball, and it kind of swipes at it and it loops over the bar. But it's the first real opportunity we've had from either team in this match. It's been very even. Mixed possession. Frankfurt seem to be happier on playing kind of on the counter attack. But one thing I've been really impressed with Hertha is that they seem to be really good at winning the ball up the pitch, and a big part of that is Vladimir Darida. He has broken the. Oh, so this was through on goal. Oh, this game is really end to end. Very nearly in on goal for, I believe. I'll just get my team sheet up. Jibril Sal was very nearly through on goal for Eintracht, but this game's been end to end. A big part of that is the fact that there's been a lot of pressure being applied to the backlines of both teams. So a big part of on Hertha's side is Vladimir Darida, who has broke the distance covered record per game twice since lockdown has ended. He's been running like an absolute madman, and he presses incredibly well. As Piontek's just smashed the ball into the back of the net. He is on fire. I love his goal celebration. He's just absolutely smashed the ball into the back of the net. And again, this was all part of the high pressing that I was talking about. Literally, as he scored, he wins the ball on the edge of the penalty area, takes the ball, I believe, away from Makoto Hasebe in the defence for Eintracht. Go to clear the ball. It's picked up by Shellbread, and he manages to get himself clear. But Piontek, he kind of has to wriggle his way past Hasebe. So Hasebe makes a mistake. He manages to tackle Shellbread, and Piontek picks the ball up, and he manages to force the ball through about 3 Eintracht defenders. He gets a little bit of luck, but it sets up perfectly for him. It's an absolutely clinical finish past Kevin Trapp in the goal, who had absolutely no chance to get to the ball. And that's another goal for Christoph Piontek. He has now scored 2 goals from open play in the last 2 games I've watched him. So maybe I'm a bit of a good luck charm for him. But yeah, absolutely massive goal for Hertha Berlin, and a big goal for Christoph Piontek, who's not had the best of years, but he seems to slowly be starting to turn things around at Hertha Berlin, and that's a massive goal.
Christoph Piontek, of course, I believe that's 3 goals in 4 Bundesliga games now for him at Hertha Berlin. Maybe that signing is paying off a little bit better than we were expecting after, of course, he left Milan in January. 4 clubs in just 2 years for Christoph Piontek. Proof that you can rise very quickly in football, but you can fall even quicker. Piontek getting on the score sheet today to give Hertha Berlin a 1-0 lead at the Olympiastadion. That's big, and that's bad news for Adi Hütter's side as well. Eintracht Frankfurt, very inconsistent this season, were originally in serious European contention, have fallen down the table now. They're not under threat of relegation, of course, but it looks like it's been a pretty harmed season for Eintracht Frankfurt, considering all the players they lost. Not a brilliant.
It's not been a great. They would have wanted to see some semblance of recovery. I think the ideal situation for Frankfurt and their supporters would have been to maybe have a bit of a poor start to the season, but to see some sort of improvement in the side. I don't think they've had that. I think things have largely remained inconsistent. I don't think Hertha should get sacked. I think he's had a lot of difficult circumstances to work under. But I think there'll be questions asked next season if we don't see any improvement over the summer, because there just seems to be a little bit of a lack of team cohesion in the side. And I think, even with this goal, really, it was poor defending. 3 players could have taken the ball off Piontek, and Piontek was able to squeeze the ball through and admittedly have a very nice finish. But, it speaks to maybe a lack of confidence, maybe a lack of quality in this Eintracht side. Is something that needs addressing in the summer. I don't know what their financial situation is going to be like because of COVID. I don't know if they're going to be able to bring in new players, but look at that backline, it's aging. Hasebe is, I think, 34 now, or at least he feels like he's been around for God knows how many years. Abraham, again, he's been around for a very long time. You just start to wonder, do they need maybe a little bit more refreshment in that backline? But yeah, still plenty of chances for them to get back into this game, but I would not bank against Hertha. They've had absolutely magnificent form recently. So we'll have to see what happens.
And looks like it's improving as well. Thank you very much, Luke Edwards, for the update there. Another game that's been going absolutely mental this afternoon. The game at the Volkswagen Arena. Disappointed that no one was here to watch it. Wolfsburg, inside half an hour, are 3 goals up against Freiburg. Penalties conceded in the box by Freiburg. Wout Weghorst gets his second goal of the game, so a brace for the Dutch striker now. Goals in the 14th and 27th minutes, one from open play, one from the penalty spot. And less than a minute later, Daniel Ginczek heading up the other end of the pitch and getting a goal as well. So that's goals for both of the Wolfsburg forwards in their 4-4-2 formation today. Looks like a very strong team, of course, bolstered in January by the signing of Xaver Schlager from RB Salzburg, alongside, of course, Maxi Arnold, who seems to have been at Wolfsburg absolutely forever. But Ginczek and Weghorst on the score sheet now for Wolfsburg. Absolutely fantastic appearance at the Volkswagen Arena this afternoon, piling on even more pressure to Hoffenheim in the race for 6th place in the Bundesliga. On the other end of the table, though, how convenient. Luke James covering Paderborn versus Werder Bremen. Game seems to have settled down since the original goal. We were thinking that maybe Werder would need to go and get a second goal in order to be really safe in this game. How have they approached it since their first goal?
It's been quite even. The whole game pretty tight so far. Paderborn haven't really created much is the only thing I would say. They had a set piece that was blocked, but apart from that, it's been pretty slow from Paderborn offensively. But at the same time, Werder Bremen haven't created over. There's not been too much to report, in all honesty. Pavlenka, once again in goal for Werder Bremen, has looked really, really solid as a good goalkeeper, the Czech international. But yeah, it's been a tidy performance from both. Both look like teams who are terrified of the idea of a mistake that could cost their team. One player I would pick out for Paderborn was Kasula. He had some really nice touches in central midfield about 5-10 minutes ago. But yeah, Paderborn struggling to create too many chances at the minute.
Klaus Fatmir Jasula, of course, 30 years of age, not Albanian international, but he's played, I think he's a regular in the Paderborn team from what I've seen this year. Definitely one of the more technical players in their side. Just as a quick mention, the third goal at Wolfsburg, my excitement can get cancelled out. Daniel Ginczek's goal has been ruled out, I think, for a suspected offside. I haven't got the exact cause for you, but it's now 2-0 at the Volkswagen Arena, not 3. Just talking about some of the Werder Bremen players that we've mentioned in the last few weeks, I want to focus on their defence, if that's okay. Obviously, we've talked about Kevin Vogt as sort of somewhere in between a centre-back and a CDM. How is Nicholas Moisander, the Finnish international, doing this afternoon? Because similar to what we're talking about with Hasabi in the other game, 34 years of age, I believe still gets called up for Finland in their European, and of course their successful European Championships qualifying campaign last summer. How have they been doing this afternoon so far? Because by all accounts, they're going to be under an awful lot of pressure when Paderborn get on the counter-attack.
So far, it's been pretty good for all of kind of Werder Bremen's back three. They've looked really composed in possession, and to be fair, they've not had too much defending to do. The shapes suit him Moisander really, really well because he's got Vox pretty much alongside him the whole way through the game. We spoke at the start of the game how it might just be a case of once again Vox playing as kind of the central defensive midfielder, but no, it has been a back three, and they've looked really comfortable. They look kind of willing to spread the two wide centre backs, happy to have possession, and because Paderborn aren't particularly keen to press in the wide areas, Antwi Adeji is kind of sitting back quite deep in the mid block, and so is Evans on the other side for Paderborn. It's been quite comfortable for both of the defenders so far. In terms of possession play, what they like to do, Moisander is just having a lot of joy receiving the ball in the half turn and then playing it out to the left back, Augustinsson, who again has looked pretty good. Again, this is, I keep saying it, but Werder Bremen are a team with so much quality. They just shouldn't be in this situation. And if they do get a win, of course, at the minute, Düsseldorf are still 0-0 against Borussia Dortmund. But if they do get the win and Düsseldorf do kind of lose, as we probably would expect them to, they would go level on points with the team in the relegation playoff place. A good chance there for Paderborn. So a set piece just came in from and Deck missed narrowly at the near post. But yeah, it's a lot of well-worked set pieces from both teams, and it's very, very tight, as I've said.
Yeah, and of course, I've just checked the other game, actually, Düsseldorf and Dortmund. Dortmund already getting 3 shots on goal, so panic stations for Düsseldorf, holding on for dear life this afternoon on the banks of the Rhine. Of course, you cover La Liga as well. We've had a couple of other games this week. I'll bring Luke Edwards into this discussion as well. I was following a couple of La Liga games that occurred yesterday. So we had Granada beating the Champions League aspiring Getafe 2-1 down in Andalusia, and on the East Coast, Valencia dropping points at the Mestalla to Levante. Two kind of surprising results, I dare say, perhaps less surprising on account of the fact that we've had a 2-month gap in between La Liga fixtures. What were your reactions to the games this week? Luke James, of course, you covered the return of La Liga with RAW Sport in the last few days. This is a surprising defeat for Getafe, is it not? Granada, of course, have been very surprising and very strong, especially defensively in the early stages of the season, but perhaps not a loss that we would have expected from a team that defends that well. Yeah,
definitely. It's been interesting season for them, and they restarted, I think, 5th in the standings, and it looked like they would win the opening game of the restart. It's nothing for them, though. One thing that's just happened in this game, though, the game I'm covering at the minute, Werder Bremen have scored again. Josh Sargent had a shot. It was saved quite clumsily by the goalkeeper, straight to Sacco's feet. And it's a 2-goal lead for Werder Bremen. So as we were saying, it's kind of panic station to Paderborn, because if it does stay like this, there'll be 8 points adrift of the teams in front of them. But in terms of La Liga, yeah, it's going to be an interesting end to the season as well, because if you look at kind of the top two, only separated by 2 points, and you've got Barcelona, who have obviously the quality of Messi, versus Real Madrid, who have much, much better depth. So La Liga, of course, once the Bundesliga is finished, is going to be really, really interesting to watch too.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Luke Edwards, we've covered Jose Bordalas' Getafe a lot this year on the European Football Podcast. One of the best defensive teams in the league. We, of course, both love Jene Dakanam an awful lot. Leandro Cabrera, who we talked about earlier, played for Getafe last year, moved to Espanyol in January. But it's not really a loss when you consider the amount of defensive personnel they've got. This is a bad loss, isn't it, for them in their aspirations of Champions League football?
It's a massive dent. It's something we saw actually this time last year, when they were still somehow. This is what I find so bizarre about Getafe, is that not so much that they were able to challenge the top four this season. It's the fact they've done it 2 seasons in a row with the personnel and the budget that they have. This is not a side that should be anywhere near the top four, especially relative to the likes of Valencia, Sevilla, Atletico Madrid, who just have so much more money and resources. So, this was already a matter of this side have overachieved this year. Even getting into the knockout stages of the Europa League was massive for them. I can't remember if they beat Ajax or not.
I think they knocked out Ajax.
Yeah. It was all it was all kind of behind the whole COVID curtain. But no, they've overperformed massively this year. So it's been a similar story with Granada. Last time they were in La Liga, I think they've already doubled the amount of points they got, because in the 16-17 season, I think they got like 20 points. They did not do very well. This year they've made some really astute signings. I'm a massive fan of Yankel Herrera in their midfield. I think he's a really good footballer. These are 2 sides that have massively overperformed this year. So it's hard to say, oh yeah, Getafe, this is a shock loss for them. They should be nowhere near top 4. The fact is they've massively overperformed already. So anything that happens between now and the end of the season, their season with Bordalas is going to be considered to be a massive success. And shock losses rather like this are going to happen because, let's face it, they don't have the quality of the other sides. It's just been a matter of trying to hang in and let other teams drop points and making sure they keep as close to the top 4 as they possibly can. The issue they've got is that I would, particularly with the result that we saw in Valencia yesterday as well, with Levante getting that 98th minute equaliser, I would expect this to kind of spur on Atletico Madrid, especially if they can beat Atletico Bilbao tomorrow. That should spur them on to go and grab that 4th place spot, because they have the most quality in the side of the sides in that conversation. So yeah, bottom line is Getafe, big overperformance this year. Shock loss, sure, but it shouldn't really put a dent on what has been a really, really big season for them.
Yeah, and my favourite thing about this game as well, just looking at the way it progressed, 6 of the 11 starters for Granada getting booked at some point over the game. So it's like, it looks like Getafe's physical defending brought against them by Diego Martinez's side. Also very happy to see Maxime Gonolo and Yankel Carrera start, both defensive midfielders in midfield, French and Venezuelan internationals respectively. Goodness me, what a defensive midfield, but credit to Granada as well for the season that they have had. Thank you very much, Luke. We'll come back to you in a moment. Luke James, of course, we've had the second goal at Werder Bremen right now. Yuya Asoko credited with the goal in the 34th minute. Worth crediting, of course, Werder Bremen. They've only got 2 shots on target in this game so far. Both of them have gone in. Of course, they're not counting the shot from Rashika from the penalty spot. Really clinical performance so far from Werder Bremen and asserting themselves away against Paderborn.
And I hate to do this so matter-of-factly, they've scored again. Literally
Yeah!
just I think it was. I kind of missed it talking to you at the point. But basically what happened there, I think it was a set piece that's gone in again. Yep, so it's a set piece over on the left-hand side, whipped in towards the far post, to the cross. I think that's by Eggestein towards David Klassen, who fires it kind of bouncing volley into the ground and then past the goalkeeper low into the bottom left corner. It's a really good finish, and it looks like a set piece they've been working on. That's a really, really good set piece goal. 3-0, as you say, they've only had 3-4 shots on target now.
Exactly. That's 3 shots on target, 3 goals. Yeah.
And to be fair, they've executed this game plan absolutely perfectly. That was a really, really brilliant set piece. I didn't actually see the foul in the build up to the goal, but swinging the ball towards the far post, flicking it back across the face of goal, and Paderborn were really, really slow to react to it. And again, straight off the restart, they've already got the ball. They've already whipped the ball back into the box. It's not come of anything this time, but I would be absolutely gobsmacked at this point if Paderborn were to look so confident and look like the team they should probably have been for most of the season.
Luke James cutting out just slightly on the other side. But yeah, we heard about. Thank you very much for that. Werder Bremen, as you said, 3-0 up in the first half away against Paderborn in what is the definition of a relegation 6-pointer. Like you say, a loss for either side basically sinks them to this Zweite Bundesliga next season. Thank you very much, Luke. We have another goal in another game. Union Berlin have taken the lead away from home against FC Köln. It's Marvin Friedrich with the goal. Both sides only with 1 shot on target throughout the game. But Friedrich scoring for Union Berlin. He's playing as right centre back, so you can assume that's from a set piece. Berlin taking a surprise lead on the road, which may well catapult them further up the table. Of course, FC Köln, after a slow start to the season, have established themselves as a relatively decent mid-table side in the Bundesliga. I'll keep you up to date throughout that game, though the biggest surprise really so far this afternoon, with the exception of Werder being so clinical, Dortmund still without a goal away at Dusseldorf. Surely their championship aspirations dying with every minute they cannot score in that game. Return to Luke Edwards. A game that we've only had 1 goal in so far, but like you say, it's very competitive. Hertha versus Eintracht Frankfurt. It's been 15 minutes since Piontek got that first goal. By all accounts, it looks very even, with the exception of the foul statistic. Hertha have fouled 8 times, Eintracht once. So clearly differences in approach between Labadia and Adi Hertha this afternoon. How's the game looking as we approach the end of the first half? Because this is the definition of a close Bundesliga game on paper.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a mid-table battle, and you would actually expect to an extent to see these two sides maybe not be as up for it. Their seasons are kind of over. I don't really see Hertha going for managing to get 6th place, which is where they would be aspiring. I think prior to the Dortmund game, there was a chance that they were going to, challenge the likes of Wolfsburg in those positions, but the results have kind of gone against them in the past couple of weeks, so they haven't been able to close the gap as much as they would have liked. So it's surprising to see both teams kind of energetic and going at it in this match. It's been really end-to-end. We've seen some really high-quality football, some good pressing, particularly on the side of Hertha Berlin. I think that's why they're probably slightly edging it right now. In terms of the performance, obviously they're edging in terms of goals. But, on Frankfurt's side, I think one of the things I've been really impressed with has been their general passing play. They're lacking that, I say this is Kostic, who just flashed a shot wide, very easily could have crept into the bottom corner. I think Justin just had it covered. But what I've been really impressed actually with Frankfurt is their general build-up play has been really impressive. They've lacked that final ball and creating that final opportunity. But some of the balls that they've been playing for their build-up play have just absolutely split open Hertha Berlin, which is why they've given away so many fouls, because they put them in really precarious positions. They've got a lot of pace up front. But I say that they've got Bastos. Other than Bastos, they've got a lot of pace up front. It's actually been a really impressive performance from them, and I think they'll go in at half-time kind of thinking, well, we should at least be level in this match, because Hertha, for all their quality, haven't been as dominant as they have been in other games that I've seen from them this year. And I think Frankfurt will be going to half-time thinking they can get themselves back into the game. And I would hope that they go for it in the second half. Unfortunately, they don't have Gonzalo Pacienza on the bench, who I think has been one of their better players. But they do have Andre Silva, who has obviously their top goal scorer this year. As is, again, they've just split open Hertha Berlin. Ball comes through to Kamada, and it's a really good save from Jarstein. Ball comes in from the right-hand side of Frankfurt. And they play it across the box, and Kostic I don't know if he goes for a shot here. He goes for a shot with his right foot, and I don't know if he scuffs it or if it's a deliberate pass because he's left-footed and his right foot is really awkward when you see him kick with it. But if the ball squeezes its way through to Kamada, and sorry, I thought the ref was about to give a penalty then. I was like, what? Kamada, he was one-on-one with Jarstein. Jarstein just makes himself big, and Kamada can't squeeze it past him. Frankfurt have are pressuring Hertha Berlin quite well. I think Boyata's gone down in the Hertha Berlin box. I think he might need some medical attention. It might be Taruna Riga, actually. Yeah, it's Taruna Riga. But yeah, Frankfurt, as I say, I think they'll go into half-time thinking that they should at least be level in this game because they've had some opportunities. And Hertha haven't been as good as they have been in previous games. So this is all this is doing is really just gearing up for a very good second half because the first half has been energetic as hell.
And you can assume that Adi Hertha would have something to say to his Frankfurt side at half-time. Again, 1-0 at the Olympiastadion, but it is a close game. Thank you, Luke. We will come back to you when half-time hits. I talked a few minutes ago about the game at the Volkswagen Arena with Daniel Ginczek's third goal for Wolfsburg being cancelled out by VAR. Well, as a result, the game has turned hands. SC Freiburg have now got on the score sheet a goal from the number 9, Lucas Haller, in the 43rd minute. So as we go into half-time at the moment, first half still playing with stoppage time, but Wolfsburg leading 2-1 against Freiburg, another team that could probably have made European aspirations earlier in the season. Of course, for a significant part of the season, were in third place in the Bundesliga, so an impressive season from them overall. A decent side, Waldschmidt and Haller up front, Salai and Vincenzo Grifo out on the wings. You can assume, again, in the second half, they will have an answer. Christian Streich taking it to Oliver Glasner's side away from home. Half-time has officially been called at the Esprit Arena. Dusseldorf currently hanging on for dear life, goalless against Lucien Favre's Borussia Dortmund. Let's actually see, just quickly before we go to the guys, have Dortmund rotated today? So they've got a front three of Torgan Hazard, Julian Brandt and Jadon Sancho. Ashraf Hakimi and Rafael Guerrero out wide at wing-back, Axel Witsel and Emre Can in midfield. A back three, Manuel Akanji, Mats Hummels and Łukasz Piszczek. So not exactly a heavily rotated side. Roman Bürki retains his place in goal. They do have the X-Factor Erling Brot Haaland to bring on in the second half if they need to. But a far from ideal start to the game for Dortmund, again chasing an away victory against Dusseldorf. No other goals to report at the moment. Half-time has been called at the Bentele Arena. Paderborn versus Werder Bremen. Luke James, a dominant performance in the first half from Florian Kohfeldt's side.
It's been a brilliant performance from Werder Bremen. They've been so clinical. They've not made an abundance of chances, but whenever they've looked like they're going to score, and that is clearly very, very problematic for Paderborn this afternoon. In terms of standout performers, I think Davy Klaassen, it's easy to say this, he scored 2 goals from 2. He's been really, really impressive in central midfield. And to be fair, whenever I've watched Werder Bremen since the restart, Klaassen has always been one of their better players, and they've just shown the header again. It's a really, really good, slightly lazy comparison, but it's Andy Carroll-esque, the way that he jumps and sends the looping header over into the opposite side of the goal, and the goalkeeper stood no chance, to be fair. Werder Bremen, very impressive. And in terms of potentially, if they are going to get out the relegation zone, if they do finish in 16th position and have to go into the relegation playoff, they're probably better than either of the sides currently in the battle for second in Bundesliga 2. So it'll be really interesting into the final games of the season to see what Werder Bremen can kind of keep doing.
Action over in the first half at the Bentele Arena. Werder Bremen 3 goals up against Paderborn. Luke Edwards, in your game, all the action happening at once. A penalty and a red card at the Olympiastadion.
I think so. His referee's just gone over to VAR. So no penalty. And I think he's sticking with, I don't know if he's sticking with the red card. I'm not really sure what's going on right now. This is absolutely mental. Yeah, I think Boyata has been sent off. So what's happened is ball comes through, Bastos is through on goal, and Boyata's chasing him. And as Bastos pulls his leg back to shoot, he very lightly clips Boyata's leg, and he trips over. So at this point, the penalty, the referee goes, he gives a red card and a penalty for Boyata for this foul on Bastos. Yeah, so it's definitely a foul. It's really unfortunate because I don't think Boyata knows too much about it. He's just kind of trying to chase. He's just trying to chase Bastos and try and get in his way and maybe make a slide tackle before he goes in on goal. He's literally just running. Bastos kicks him, falls over. It's definitely a trip, unfortunately, for Boyata. I think the red card is the right decision. And the referee gives a penalty, but he's gone over to his VAR, and it actually seems like the contact's been made outside of the penalty area. So what we're seeing now is, so it's a sending off for Boyata because it's outside the penalty area. I think otherwise, if it was inside the penalty area, I think it would have been a yellow card. I don't think he would have given that as a red. Oh, I say this as Kostic very nearly flashes it into the top corner after the free kick rebounds off the ball. But yeah, this could really flip the game on its head a little bit because up to this point, Frankfurt were just kind of nearly there, and that, the fact that Bastos was through on goal epitomised that. But Hertha Berlin going down to 10 men, they're really going to struggle in the second half. Frankfurt have really piled on the pressure since the goal went in. So, exciting second half ahead. Really looking forward to it. Boyata, unlucky, but rightfully sent off. It's just one of those unfortunate things. And, Frankfurt will be given a much needed boost there going into the second half.
Plenty of action in the two games that the two Lukes have been covering this afternoon. Currently 1-0 Hertha Berlin over Eintracht Frankfurt. Paderborn 3 goals down at home to Werder Bremen. In the other 3 games, Wolfsburg leading Freiburg 2-1, half-time called there. FC Köln 1 goal down at home against Union Berlin. But amazingly, I still think this is one of the biggest shocks of the day. Dusseldorf still hanging in there 0-0 against Lucien Favre's Borussia Dortmund. But guys, I brought you all on the screen at the same time. We've been talking about German football for the last few weeks on RAW Sports Quaran-Stream. The Premier League is going to be returning very, very soon. I believe this is actually the closest stream to the return of the English Premier League, admittedly behind closed doors, similar to the Bundesliga's conditions. Luke James, I'll come to you first. Just how quickly has this come about for you? Because it seemed like a few weeks ago when we were reporting on the Belgian Pro League getting cancelled, the Eredivisie getting cancelled, Liga getting cancelled most significantly, we were assuming with the R rate being higher in the UK than in other countries across continental Europe, there was a chance the Premier League would be either decided on PPG, would have gone to some kind of playoff system, or otherwise. It did look for a while like we wouldn't get Premier League football for a while, but now it's coming back.
It felt very quick the way that popular opinion changed on it as well. But in terms of the league coming back, I think it got to the point where the teams at the bottom of the table, kind of led by Karen Brady at West Ham, got to the point where they didn't have the numbers to vote down the season then. So it got to a point where the Premier League coming back was inevitable and they just kind of had to get on with it. And I think the fact that the matches are now being played at home and away venues does help out. I think it's, although somewhat ironically, given how Bundesliga performed at home, given kind of West Ham's complaints, but it's helped with regards to getting teams back on board with regards to playing again. And you talk about kind of comparing to others, you just have to look across the Atlantic and think about how MLS is returning next month as well. And it's kind of, if the competitions are able to shield their players from the situation outside, it seems like for monetary reasons they're going to be able to bring back the competitions.
And we know, of course, in English football and the Premier League especially, just how important the monetary value is. And of course, for your club, West Ham United, still under threat of relegation. I only discovered last night that you're equal on points with Brighton and Hove Albion, which is borderline criminal considering how much you spent last summer. Just quickly, what are your expectations for West Ham towards the end of the season? Of course, definitely pressure towards the end of the year. You have got some arguably fairly poor teams behind you, but the threat is there, that third place in the relegation zone, plenty of teams around that 27, 28 point area. And by all accounts, West Ham's team far from gelling well this year under Manuel Pellegrini or currently David Moyes. Expectations for the last 10 games or so?
Very low from me personally. If you look
what a surprise.
Yeah, very, very low from me personally. If you look at West Ham's fixtures, I think our opening 3 games are Wolves away, Chelsea and Tottenham are our opening 3 games, and I think they're all within the space of a week. So we could be in a situation where West Ham, with 5 or 6 games left of the season, could comfortably be in the relegation zone and be in a lot of trouble. It's quite. I speak as a West Ham fan. It's quite concerning, kind of looking at it as well, because when the Premier League Project Restart was kind of building pace, West Ham were one of the clubs that were very, very adamant that we wouldn't want to play at neutral venues. And since the Bundesliga has come back, it's only been kind of the teams right at the top of the table, Borussia Dortmund, teams like that, who have been winning at home regularly anyway. So that's concerning. Stylistically as well, I think West Ham could have issues, because if you look at the teams in the Bundesliga that play defensive football, tend to play a deeper block, tend to play either a 5-3-2 or a 4-4-2, which are kind of David Moyes' two preferred tactics. They've really struggled. And I'd compare us, I think West Ham comfortably have a better man for man than someone like Union Berlin. But if you compare how they've got on since the restart and you look at how we play, I'm quite concerned that West Ham will be playing Coventry next season, if I'm being honest.
I mean, you're still going to be at Warwick University next year. That would be an amazing fixture to go and watch. Of course, you'd assume with Coventry likely getting promoted into the Championship, they'd be bringing in some big signings. Let's just hope that they can sign strikers slightly better than West Ham United can. We'll come back to you in a few minutes over halftime. We'll talk a little bit about Formula One, which has had some news this week. Luke Edwards, of course, your team, very, very different fortunes. Needless to say, you're a Liverpool fan, miles ahead at the top of the table. Even I, who's been lambasting the lack of competition in the Premier League all year, forget just how far Liverpool are ahead at the at the top of the table at the moment. Your opinion on the league coming back, because it looked like of all the European top 5 leagues, it looked like the Premier League would be the one, especially at the top end, that would be most easily able to be decided with teams being happy about it.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, we are going to get an end to the season. Form kind of goes out the window, but because by all accounts Liverpool went into a bad run of form the moment that the league called off, which was quite convenient. What are you thinking is going to happen at the end of the season? We don't need to say that Liverpool are going to be champions. I think it's almost mathematically confirmed already. But going into like the Champions League positions in particular, you've got Leicester City in there, you've got Chelsea around there, you've also got some serious overperformers, the likes of Wolves and Sheffield United still in the top 10. Just how do you see this rolling out as we enter the final days of the season?
I would fully expect... Well, I mean, if we were taking the assumption that Man City lose their court case and they're suspended for the next couple of seasons, the Champions League, they can't play any more Champions League football. I would seriously expect. I think Leicester should secure the spot. I think Chelsea will as well. I think Lampard will really use that extra bit of time off he's had to really solidify his squad. That'll be a massive part of this season for them. I think they should have just enough to get themselves over the line. The big question is that 5th place. Currently Manchester United sat there, but as you said, there's every chance that Wolves, Sheffield United, Tottenham, maybe even Arsenal, if they have things go the right way for them, could claw themselves into that conversation as well. But I think Manchester United will have enough. Purely on the basis that they got Paul Pogba back. He's been out seemingly all season. Marcus Rashford as well. He's been out with a back injury since God knows when. I believe he played in their friendly against West Brom yesterday. So it's been really good for him to be back. And they seem to have a real team cohesion back. Solskjaer seems to have pulled it together just at the right time, just before lockdown ended, with the likes of Bruno coming in, who is seemingly a revelation in that side. If they can get their injured players back in the squad, keep Bruno fit, and maintain that level of performance that they had in sort of February, March time, then I think top 5 rather is theirs to lose. Wolves, Sheffield United, I would expect Sheffield United to probably drop off. If Chris Wilder's team don't drop off, then he deserves manager of the season. I mean, we've already had this conversation, but if they can get going again after this lockdown, because I think a big part of why they were being so successful is they did have this real momentum behind them, and now they've kind of had that novelty factor wear away, and now they're expected to perform week in, week out. So if they're still able to produce the level of performances and produce the results that they were getting, then Chris Wilder's done an absolutely magnificent job. He's done a great job regardless, but if he can get them, even as consistent as they were before the end of the start of lockdown, end of season, same thing, then he's done an even better job than I don't think anyone could have ever imagined. Wolves, I think, are still... I'm not a big fan of Wolves defensively. I still think they're lacking. I think that's probably what's going to cost them. I love Raul Jimenez. I love Adama Traore. I think they're really good players. But as much as I like Conor Cody, I don't think he's the best defender in the world. And I just think that will maybe cost them come the end of the season. They've got a great squad, but I just don't think it's enough to pip the likes of Manchester United, particularly in the form that they've been in.
I mean, of course, the regular occurrence with Manchester United, because we've talked about positive upturns in form, especially after signings with them. They tend to be very short term, so it's difficult to measure this Bruno surge, as I'm terming it, after signing Bruno Fernandes in January. Because, like we said, we were considering him a signing of the season, but he's only played about 5 games. Then again, of course, former head of sport Kylan Stillwood was considering Jared Bowen one of the signings of the season, who's played about 3 for West Ham. Luke James, we'll move to you just quickly. Of course, your take on this top 5 race with Man City. I'll say it, flagrantly breaching financial fair play rules and potentially committing accountancy fraud. Sue me, I don't care. They could potentially be out of Champions League next year. Just how do you see this battle for top 5 going this year? Of course, like Luke says, we've got Man United in that position at the moment. But going down to, as he says, Arsenal, it's only 5 points between 5th and 9th at the moment. There's a case, surely, for most of the teams in that area of the pitch to take that final spot.
Yeah, emerging from the restart, I think one of the teams, and it again, I support West Ham. Well, it kind of pains me to say this, but I think Tottenham, given the number that got back from injury, could be quite interesting to watch after the restart. I think they'll find themselves going run in. It really depends on kind of the mentality of teams in the area as well. So if you look at United at the moment, they're on 28. They played 28 games. They're currently on 43 points. So a win, kind of in their game in hand, would put them back into 5th position. And for a team like Sheffield United, I think it's so important that they stay in they recall the restart. And I'm not sure they're going to be able to do that. I think that kind of the comparative quality with the teams around them in the standings could become a little bit more obvious. I think if I had to pick a team out of Manchester United, Wolves, Sheffield United, Tottenham and Arsenal, I think, to be honest, Manchester United might have enough. And it's not necessarily because Pogba's coming back. I just think Man United was starting to a little bit after Christmas, and I think players like Rashford will be really important going forwards. And I don't know. I've just got a good feeling about Manchester United at that moment.
And we've said this about Man United a few times over the last few years, but for some reason, I mean, it always feels real when the latest one happens, but this upturn in form feels real for Manchester United. I can see what a lot of people are saying about him. Bruno Fernandes, I mean, why it took them so long to bring in a player like that when they clearly needed someone. And of course, Scott McTominay and Fredge, both very impressive this year. Fredge, arguably Manchester United's player of the season, just my controversial opinion. But we'll move on to another sport, which is, well, it is coming back, Formula One, in the sense that we have had some emphasized behind closed door tests over the last few days. Ferrari conducting a test of their own, Mercedes at Silverstone, the venue for the British Grand Prix, testing a car from 2 years ago. The test, more than anything else, to try out new COVID-19 conditions in the pit lane. I don't know how much of this you've seen, Luke, but like the bubbles of the limited amount of contact between members of staff in the garage. Admittedly, drivers will have to be close to chief engineers and whatnot, but again, keeping very, very close monitoring of all of this in the pit lane and beyond throughout the Grand Prix weekend, because of course we very nearly got an Australian Grand Prix at the beginning of the year until a couple of members of the McLaren team tested positive for COVID-19. Formula One, it is coming back. We've had a hell of a lot of news which we can get into over the next 10 minutes or so. We're finally getting a season, but at this stage it doesn't, dare I say, it just doesn't feel like a real one at this point.
It's really odd in terms of the way that Formula One's worked out. And it's what you say as well with the Australian Grand Prix that very, very almost went ahead at the start of the season. Kind of looking back now, it speaks to such a weird place sport was in at the time, because obviously we were days away from having Arsenal versus Manchester City, and it was only really because Mikel Arteta came down with coronavirus that sport in this country stopped as well. So that's kind of, I digress, but I think that's interesting. In terms of Formula One, you say, yeah, it's really, really Eurocentric to start off the season. 8 races in Europe. Of course, you've got back-to-back races in Austria to start the season, and then you go over to Hungary, and then after that, you've got back-to-back races at Silverstone. And what will be interesting as well, and the proposals are probably rejected because of opposition from Toto Wolff at Mercedes, but lots of ideas flying around the paddock at the minute about reverse grids and about ways to make Formula One more entertaining, more kind of fun to watch, given the number of repetitive races that could be happening this year. And it seems to me, and it looks like kind of at the moment, that it's just going to be a case of back-to-back races at Austria are going to be the same. There's not going to be a reverse grid. And I can't really see a situation where that doesn't get stale, because if, for example, Mercedes run away with it in the first race of the season, they then go back the next weekend to the Red Bull Ring in Austria, and then they win again, it might kind of take the shine away from the start of the season, because so many people have been so looking forward to it. So unless there's obviously massively different weather weekend to week, of course Formula One can't control, it will be a tricky year for Formula One to market in terms of kind of entertainment value.
And of course, Liberty Media's big plans for Formula One over the last few years, the dream of having a 25 race calendar, which admittedly they're still some distance away. This was set to be the biggest season in Formula One history, 22 different venues throughout the season, including, of course, the return of Zandvoort in the Netherlands and, crucially, the Hanoi Street Circuit in Vietnam, which we now know pretty much for certain we will not be seeing until next year. The first 8 races of the season, as you allude to, are going to be in Europe, double headers or not. I'll just take you through the schedule at the moment. So July 3rd through 5th is the first weekend at the Red Bull Ring in Austria, Spielberg. The next week, it's like Luke said, the same track. A week after that, the race weekend's coming thick and fast. The race at the Hungara Ring by Budapest. So that's going to be round 3 of the season. A very technical track, difficult to overtake on. So if things get stale in the double header at Austria, you can guarantee they're probably going to get staler at Hungary as well, except of course with adverse conditions. 2 race weekends following that at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit between Buckinghamshire and Northamptonshire, and then a race at Catalonia, which we didn't even think was going to be on the calendar at all starting the season, Spanish Grand Prix, followed by the regular European doubleheader after the regular summer break, Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, and then Monza in Italy. But as you say, I mean, granted this is because of the geographical situation of the COVID-19 pandemic, but the Grand Prix that got cancelled this week, the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku, the Singaporean Grand Prix circuit around Marina Bay, and we've now had it confirmed that the Japanese Grand Prix at the legendary Suzuka has been cancelled as well. The Asian portion of this season has just disappeared all of a sudden, and yet this is the market that Formula One has been most desperately trying to enter over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, and it's an issue for Formula One as well, because if you look at the schedule at the moment as well, and something that cropped up as well, not kind of related to the Asian tracks, but they're talking about holding the Montreal Grand Prix in like late September, October, which, given the weather kind of in Quebec at the time, seems like a very, very kind of outlandish suggestion at the best of times. But as you say, kind of a lot of the races over in Japan, Singapore, Azerbaijan not going ahead I think it is going to hurt Formula One going forwards, because they've been so desperate to move Formula One away from being so Eurocentric, away from being kind of so concentrated in North America as well. And at the moment, it doesn't look like they're going to be able to do that. Of course, they're talking about finishing the season on, I believe, the 13th of December in Abu Dhabi. So those races will still go ahead. But in terms of once we get to the last weekends of the season, it could be a totally different situation with regards to COVID-19 anyway in those countries. So it's just going to be a case of having to take stock, take it week by week. And to be honest, Formula One have a seriously difficult kind of logistical nightmare on their hands with regards to scheduling.
Yeah, some news just coming in. The second half is underway for, I believe, basically all of the games that we're covering this afternoon, so I will let the two Lukes go back to covering those games. We'll talk more about Formula One. If I've heard, this is not confirmed at this point, but I can say it from Josh Sim, we are considering doing a big motorsport preview of some description ahead of the return of Formula One. I just really want to talk about Formula 2, to be honest, because that's the hipster thing I'm obsessed with. So maybe there'll be a chance to talk more about that, including the news of Carlos Sainz moving to Ferrari for the 2021 season, my favourite driver on the grid, Daniel Ricciardo moving from Renault to replace him at McLaren, and whatever the hell is going to happen to Sebastian Vettel, if my dad is correct, he's going to be retiring, the 4-time world champion, finally leaving Ferrari after, unless he wins the championship this year, 6 years failing to win the title for the Scuderia. We have a goal in the second half at the Volkswagen Arena. I talked about Ginczek's disallowed goal in the first half. Freiburg have turned the tides. Roland Salai, the right winger for SC Freiburg, has made it 2-2 just 1 minute after the restart over in Wolfsburg. That's potentially a big drop point for Wolfsburg if they can't score another goal, of course. Hoffenheim, with a new manager breathing down their necks for that final European place, there could be an awful lot of pressure there going towards the end of the season. Wolfsburg, it looked like they had this game basically in control in the first half hour. That has absolutely disappeared. Like I say, 2-2 over at the Volkswagen Arena. No other goals to report in the other games. Luke Edwards just sat down with his brand new H2O. No goals to report in the game so far because it's only just started. But of course, Hertha Berlin down to 10 men. We've lost Dedrick Boyata, who is a threat at both ends of the pitch. The guy scores quite a few goals, despite his centre-back position. Obviously not as many as Martin Hinteregger for Eintracht Frankfurt. But still, an offensively capable centre-back nonetheless. He got sent off for perhaps it was a fair red card as far as I can tell.
It was a fair red card, but unfortunate. Yeah,
he didn't intend it, but it is a red card.
It was a fair red card in the Frankfurt deserved to have a member of the other team sent off for what happened. But it was unfortunate that Dedrick Boyata didn't mean what he did. He was just running. I mean, it was his fault. I mean, he should have not let Bastos get goal side of him at the end of the day. I think that's really what's cost him there. But going second half, Frankfurt have made a change. They have brought on Andre Silva, top goal scorer this year. I think it was an absolute no-brainer when, Hertha Berlin are going to be playing without their strongest centre-back partnership and the base on which their form has relied. Torino Riga and Boyata have been absolutely massive this year. Ever since they come back, they've formed a really good partnership. They haven't really let in too many goals. So to have one of them gone it's a big deal. So, taking absolutely any opportunity to take advantage of that, bringing on Andre Silva, top goal scorer, he's going to be trying to disrupt things as much as possible and also create space for the likes of Filip Kostic, who probably my player of the match so far. He's been really dangerous on that left-hand side for Frankfurt. It'll be about getting him on the ball as much as possible, whipping in those crosses for Silva to get his head on. And hopefully Frankfurt will find their way back into the game for their sake and put a bit more pressure on Hertha Berlin and Bruno Labbadia.
Yeah, absolutely. And, European aspirations still, I suppose, possible for both sides, unlikely though they are. But
I think, not so much for Frankfurt, but definitely for Hertha, particularly if the score at the Volkswagen Arena remains the same. They needed both teams to drop points in this game if they were going to have any hope of clawing their way up the table. And that should, if that remains the same, that actually gives Hertha a good opportunity here to just close that gap a little bit. And, just give themselves a chance. It's not likely. There's no pressure on them to go and get a European spot. Labbadia done an amazing job regardless, and they're going to press on next year and go for those European spots. Not even a Europa League spot, maybe even a Champions League spot. But, it would be nice. I think that's the kind of attitude they'll be taking towards it. It would be nice for them to get a tasty Europa League spot to go and contend with Europe's big boys next year. I say big boys, it'd most likely be like winter nights in Belarus or something, but it's definitely
we've all got to start somewhere.
Exactly,
we've all got to start somewhere.
They've got some really good players. I absolutely love watching Hertha. They've been my number one team to watch since football's come back. They're ace. They're really good fun to watch. They play great football. They love pressing more than anything, which I love in a team. I love any team that tries to press high. Just hoping for a good second half of attractive football and maybe even a couple more goals.
And the proof that you can actually achieve great things with good investment in football if you don't appoint Jurgen Sodding Klinsmann for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Thank you very much, Luke. I've got some updates for you from La Liga. Of course, we were reporting on Espanyol versus Alaves earlier today. That did finish 2-0. Perhaps disappointing for Espanyol not to get a third goal, of course, as Luke said earlier. Luke Edwards, that is. Goal difference will be a factor towards the end of the season with about 6 teams battling for 3 out of 3 relegation spots at the bottom of La Liga. The second game this afternoon starting at Balaidos at 4 p.m. Celta Vigo hosting Villarreal. Javier Callejas Villarreal, who had a decent start to the season, but once people learned how to actually defend against them, fortunes kind of went against them. We have lineups for both sides. I'll go through quickly. Ruben Blanco starting in goal for Celta Vigo, a back 4 of Lucas Alarza on loan from Boca Juniors, Nestor Araujo, Jason Murillo and Hugo Mayo at right back, Bradaric, Rafinha and and Diop in midfield. Santi Mina out on the right, which is unusual for a striker. Garcia on the left, Juan Hernandez Garcia, that is, and the legendary Iago Aspas down the middle. Well, legendary Iago Aspas if you're not a Liverpool supporter. Moving over to Villarreal, Sergio Asenjo in goal, a back four of Ali Moreno, Torres, Raul Albiol and Mario Gaspar, Santi Cazorla, Vicente Iborra and Andre Frank Zambo and Gisa in midfield, Moi Gomez on the left, Gerard Moreno on the right, Paco Alcacer, their new signing in January, down the middle. Promises to be an interesting game, both sides with stakes in the La Liga so far. Celta Vigo desperately trying to get away from the relegation zone. Yet another La Liga side under threat of relegation despite having one hell of a lot of good players. I'll return to the relegation six-pointer of the day. Luke James, Paderborn versus Werder Bremen. We haven't got any significant action so far in the second half in this game, but is it still the case of all systems go for Werder Bremen? Are they still in control of the game after the break?
Paderborn have actually been the better side since half-time. They've had much more possession. They've been kind of much more kind of in the ascendancy. Paderborn actually hit the post on 50 minutes. The rain really is pouring down in North Rhine-Westphalia at the minute. It's absolutely pelting it down, to be honest. The ball came in from the right-hand side. Michel hit the post, and then the ball was just about scrambled clear. But there's been a really interesting tactical change at half-time from Paderborn. So they've gone to a back three now. It's like having a 4-2-3-1, but they've ditched one of the fullbacks and put in an extra defensive midfielder instead. So now essentially you've got a 3-1-2-3-1 formation going on for Paderborn. Since the break, they've looked pretty good. They did hit the post. It's going to take something pretty spectacular from Werder Bremen for them to throw away this lead. But Paderborn, so far in the second half, have actually been just about the better side.
And we've seen a hell of a lot of surprises from both teams, maybe more negative surprises from Werder Bremen at the defensive end. Hell, maybe there is the possibility for 3 late goals for Paderborn in this game. But again, Paderborn have been pretty damn good relative to what we expected since they came back, of course, 4 draws in the last 5 games, drawing, as you covered last week, against RB Leipzig. The change in formation, do you think that's actually going to help them offensively in the second half, moving from one fullback to a defensive midfielder necessarily? I mean, they haven't got an awful lot of natural goals in the team, but then again, it is Werder Bremen, most goals conceded in the league. So do you think, obviously we're not going to say it's likely that Paderborn score 3 goals and Werder Bremen bottle it in the second half, but can you see Paderborn getting on the score sheet through these tactical changes? Considering the weather,
Honestly, anything could happen. They could score a goal from anything. The pitch is really wet at this point. The ball is skidding all over the place. How I would kind of compare the tactical change that they've made at half-time, it's like on Football Manager, when you desperately need a goal at the end of the game, so you just throw more players up the pitch. That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting at the moment, and they're looking to go quite direct. So when the 2 centre-backs kind of peel off to the left and right-hand side, they're looking to get the ball long into Michel, who's still kind of leading the line for Paderborn. In terms of Werder Bremen, they look good defensively. Of course, they've gone with the 3 at the back themselves today, which is kind of a change from what they're usually doing. My concern for Paderborn is they're not particularly blessed for pace kind of anywhere in, I was going to say in defence, but anywhere in their team. And if Josh Sargent is given enough space to get in behind, that could kind of cause them a fair number of issues. Going forwards, yeah, as you say, it's exceptionally unlikely that Paderborn are going to score 3, but I wouldn't put them past it at this point for them possibly to get on the score sheet, because they do look hungry. They look desperate, and we could kind of see it get a little bit kind of more bitty as we go through the second half.
And of course, if on the off chance they did concede, score 3 goals in the second half, it would take the pressure off of Dusseldorf. Uwe Rosler's Dusseldorf still goalless at home against Borussia Dortmund, amazingly. Thank you very much, Luke James. We return to Luke Edwards. What did I say, Luke, to you? Never doubt Bas Dost. Maybe he hasn't got a lot of pace, but we've got a goal at the Olympiastadion.
We do indeed.
Frankfurt have levelled it off.
And I called it. I called exactly how they were going to score, Joe. I told you it was going to be getting the ball into the penalty area from wide positions. I called it from Kostic, but it's actually come from Danny Da Costa on the right-hand side.
Okay.
The other Cost in their side. No, that didn't work. No, Danny Da Costa gets the ball on the right-hand side, and he pings the ball. He kind of floats it into the penalty area, but it causes a lot of problems. They brought on Niklas Stark in place of Vedad Ibišević to kind of give them more numbers in defence. He's
Good
partnering Torino Riga, but he doesn't have the same aerial presence that Boyata brings, rather. And he lose out a header to Andre Silva, who kind of manages to loop the header back across goal and over the head of Torino Riga, behind Torino Riga, who else is there but Bastos to just fire the ball home. No chance really for Jarstein to clear it. But no, absolutely crucial goal for Eintracht Frankfurt. They've had all the possession in the second half, as you would have predicted, with Hertha down to 10 men. But Hertha would have been hoping to hang on for a little bit longer before they did concede, because this could well give the momentum for Frankfurt to go and grab an extra goal. They seem to be very threatening, particularly on their right-hand side at the minute, more so than anything else. They're bringing off. Okay, interesting. So they are just brought off. As I believe, now brought off Samardzic, who came on to play on the left-hand side for them, and he's now been brought off. And I don't know why. I think it must have been Labadie has acknowledged that he's made a tactical misstep or something. But he was getting rinsed on that right-hand side by Da Costa, so maybe he's just noticed something that he doesn't like there. They've also just brought on Alexander Esvine, hopefully looking for a near-post finish in a 3-5-2 formation from him. Anyone who's played FIFA 13 will understand that. Esvine's been brought on. He will provide a little bit of pace up front if we're going by FIFA stats.
Well, thank you very much for that, Luke. The game that I've banned from all RAW Sport commentary, returning even when we're talking about the Bundesliga. From one Luke to another, we've got one goal in the game at the Olympiastadion. We were saying there was a chance that Paderborn could score in the second half. There was a chance they could make things difficult for Werder Bremen. Unfortunately, I don't know how it translates into German. The commentary curse exists. Werder Bremen have scored yet again. It's now 4 goals away on the road at the Benteler Arena. Luke James, talk us through it.
Well, to be honest, it was a good goal. It was a really good finish. Good build-up play through the central areas of the pitch for Werder Bremen. The ball's played through into Paderborn's half. Sacco with his back to goal, kind of in that number 10 position, plays a really, really good through ball, kind of into the right half space for David Klaassen to run onto. David Klaassen plays a really, really nice ball across the face of the goal for Josh Sargent, who, if we're being completely honest, should have absolutely smashed it into the back of the net. But it was a really good save from the goalkeeper. So that is, I think, his first save of the day. So congratulations to him. The ball, unfortunately, does rebound to Eggestein, who fires it into the top corner. Absolutely no doubts about that. That's Eggestein's first goal of 2019-20. And I think his first goal in general for over 18 months. So he'll be happy to be on the score sheet. But yeah, in terms of the three at the back, it did kind of cost them there.
I mean, I've been Maxi Eggestein. I think he's never actually been called up to the German national team. Luke Edwards and I were doing a challenge, what we call Challenge 11s for a podcast recently. Best uncapped 11. I think I had Maxi Eggestein in my midfield. Very happy to see him on the score sheet today. A surprising scorer, but perhaps not surprising to score against the team at the bottom of the table, SC Paderborn. We've talked about David Klaassen already in this game. It seems a complete world away from that dreadful season at Everton, although to be fair, it was a stupid signing on their part. What a game he has had away on the road at Paderborn this weekend. And for Dusseldorf, who are still hanging on, this is the game I'm following this afternoon at the Esprit Arena, still goalless against Dortmund. This is a massive statement of intent from Werder Bremen, isn't it?
It's huge for Werder Bremen as well. And as you said at the top of the show, Bremen have one of the worst goal difference in the league. Of course, they've conceded among the most goals in the competition as well. So winning 4-0 today could be really, really important for them going forwards. A couple of yellow cards just shown. I'm not sure who to, if I'm being completely honest. I think Klaassen might have had one. But as you say, David Klaassen, really impressive. And what I think has been really important for Klaassen this afternoon as well is, given the system that Werder Bremen playing with the back three, he's just had more freedom to roam. So, for instance, with that one, he was popping up in the space where you'd typically expect either your right midfielder, your left midfielder to be in, and then it was just a good ball. And the thing with Klaassen is, technically, he's such a good footballer. He has the vision, he has the touch, slightly kind of lacks dynamism sometimes. But in situations where he damage teams, and it should have been an assist for him. Josh Sargent should have definitely scored the goal. But him really, really important for.
And he'll definitely get that. I don't know how this stat works exactly, but it might go down as like a crucial chance created or a good chance created. So it's still a plus in the column for Davy Klaassen, who, is it fair to say, man of the match this afternoon so far against Paderborn?
Yeah, in terms of his output, he will be the player that is given man of the match from the commentators. He's been really, really impressed. A player that I always like watching, like pointing out when I talk about Werder Bremen as well, is Pavlenka. When he's been called upon, he's really, really impressive. He's such a good goalkeeper. I looked at it a couple of weeks ago, kind of as a West Ham fan, thinking that if West Ham, by some miracle, did stay Pavlenka in the Premier League, he's a really, really good goalkeeper. Another player as well for for Werder Bremen, who's been really key as well, is Kevin Vogt. I've mentioned him last week, or rather the week before. He's so impressive in possession, and just when he drops in between the two centre halves, he opens up the pitch. And it's been a really comfortable day for him. And it's not been helped by the fact that Paderborn are a team that try and press high up the field. But yeah, the conditions have definitely played into Werder Bremen's hands so far.
Absolutely. Just to remind you, for those of you who missed it, Werder Bremen 4-0 up away at the Bentele Arena against SC Paderborn. Luke James, the editor of RAW Sport, keeping us up to date there. We'll come back to you later. No other goals to report in the game so far. I'll just take you through the scorelines quickly. The game I still can't believe is goalless. Dusseldorf versus Lucien Favre's Borussia Dortmund, 0-0 on the Rhineland. FC Köln versus Union Berlin is 1-0 to Union, who took a lead in the first half. Wolfsburg have bottled what would look like a 3-goal lead, but was actually a 2-goal lead at the Volkswagen Arena. SC Freiburg making it 2-2 in the second half. Hertha Berlin versus Eintracht Frankfurt. There's still action going on there. It's currently 1-1, but by all accounts, Eintracht Frankfurt have got the upper hand. And like we've just covered, SC Paderborn 4 goals down against Werder Bremen. Both sides need to win that game. Well, it's pretty damn clear which side is looking like they're going to win it at the moment. We'll return to Luke Edwards, who is covering one of the closer games today, Hertha Berlin versus Eintracht Frankfurt. I believe there's some action going on in the game. By all accounts, it's very, very end-to-end, with Eintracht Frankfurt having the better of it at the moment. They've taken an advantage in shots, 10 shots to 2 rather. Shots on target, they lead 5-2. Possession is just about equal as well. It looks like Adi Hütter's really turned it around in the second half.
He has. I think they're making the most of the sending off more than anything else. I think, prior to, they were already very much in the game even before sending off. I say this is Frankfurt through on goal now. Oh my word! What a goal! That was unbelievable. So I'm gonna have to take a little bit of a. Right, so Kostic brings up the ball, and it comes to Kamada on the edge of the penalty area, and I think he beats about 3 players. He takes the ball way past Michael Gruch, and my stream is frozen. That's all very good. That's exactly what I wanted right then. He takes the ball past Michael Gruch, and he kind of dances past 2 Frankfurt defenders, plays the ball across goal, and Andre Silva is there to backheel it into the goal. It's an absolute stunner. And no less than what Frankfurt have deserved. They've been by far the best side.
And Luke Edwards has appeared to have just go completely missing in the last few seconds. I don't know what happened, but just to confirm, if you didn't hear it, Hertha Berlin. Oh, he's back now.
Sorry, yeah, I don't know what happened there. It just cut out.
That's weird. You were so excited that you managed to take the stream down with you.
It just cut out. It cut out. No, it's fine. Yeah, so it was just an absolutely stunning goal. I'd recommend anyone to go and watch this on YouTube or on Reddit or somewhere. Just an absolutely incredible goal. Well deserved on the behalf of Frankfurt, and they'll be, excited to go and get an extra goal, because ever since the sending off, and frankly throughout the entirety of the second half, it's been all Frankfurt. They were already, I would say, marginally the better side in the first half anyway. But no, they've really used this second half to assert their dominance, and Hertha need a change. I would advocate that they bring on Matej Cunha. I think they only have 1 substitution left. If Cunha's on the bench and he's fit and he's not suffering from that concussion that he picked up a couple of weeks ago, they need to bring him on, because otherwise they are just going to hemorrhage this game. They need to try something, try and get themselves a goal and then sit back and defend. But at the minute, Frankfurt looking very good and very much on it.
Absolutely. Frankfurt taking the lead away from home. Adi Hütter's side asserting control against the high-spending Hertha Berlin. Thank you very much, Luke Edwards. Action coming in all across the Bundesliga this afternoon. There is a goal at the Bentele Arena. Luke James, the comeback is well and truly on. The
comeback is on, so Abdelhamid Sabiri for Paderborn scored the goal from a corner kick. I've got a particularly kind of awe-inspiring finish. The ball was, as I said, the conditions, although they've just actually started to improve. The sun is now out in Paderborn. Very, very slippery around the edge of the penalty area. The ball was bounced around, and Sabiri from very, very close range smashed home to to reduce the deficit to just 4-1 now in favour of Werder Bremen. But yeah, not too much apart from that has happened, to be honest. We're now kind of 69 minutes into the game. I'd be gobsmacked if Paderborn were able to score any more goals from open play. But yeah, so far Werder Bremen still look quite comfortable. They've not particularly been shaken since they conceded that goal.
There is, of course, the potential that goal difference could work against Werder Bremen, assuming they go on to win this game. Not a particularly radical suggestion, 3 goals up on the road, but still, they go on to win this game. Perhaps they end the season level on points with Fortuna Düsseldorf, maybe a team that drops down like Augsburg, or maybe even Union Berlin, who are now 2 goals up against FC Köln. I'll get you an update on that in a few minutes. But yeah, I mean, there is a chance that goal difference could rear its head towards the end of the season, especially when you consider that Werder Bremen's goal difference right now is shocking. It's actually significantly worse than Paderborn's is, a team that I think myself and Luke Edwards said really shouldn't be in the Bundesliga, at least in terms of the quality of their team. They deserve to be there. They got promoted legitimately. But you know, have Paderborn been outright bad this afternoon, or have Werder Bremen just been good relative to their position in the table?
Werder Bremen have just been absolutely clinical. Whenever they've gone forward, they've been really, really kind of threatening on goal. The shots that they've had, the keeper, a couple of times has probably let himself down with kind of the second goal where he parried into Eggestein. But yeah, no, this has just been an afternoon where Bremen have been the better team. They've taken their chances. To be fair, I think 4-1 is pretty harsh on Stefan Baumgart's side. Paderborn don't really deserve to be 4-1 down. At the same time, they probably don't really deserve a goal. They've not really created much from open play. And you talk about goal difference at the bottom of the table. So at the minute, Werder Bremen rather, on minus 30 goal difference. Fortuna Düsseldorf minus 27. And then the side above them, I believe that's Mainz, are on minus 23. So a big win for Werder Bremen could really, really help them out in terms of goal difference at the bottom of the table.
Absolutely, and of course it does help Werder Bremen. Werder Bremen, of course, desperately needing to win this game. You reported to me in the private chat a few minutes ago that Dortmund had taken the lead through Rafael Guerreiro away at the Esprit Arena. Just to confirm, that goal has been chalked off for, I believe, an offside on VAR. So Dortmund still goalless away on the road against Düsseldorf. Hell, Düsseldorf got Alfred Schroeder sacked last weekend. They might well just be about to kill Lucien Favre's title hopes well and truly. So thank you very much, Luke James, for that. We have the update from Union Berlin. They have taken a 2-goal lead away against FC Köln. Christian Gentner is the goal scorer in the 67th minute. I mean, 41% possession, only 3 shots on target, and yet they lead 2-0. If this wasn't a game to define Union Berlin's, quite frankly, amazing first season in the Bundesliga, I mean, I don't know what is. Doing fantastically well this afternoon, and again creeping further and further away from the relegation zone that so many people thought they would be a fixture in throughout this season. As it turns out, Union have barely been threatened by it for most of the season, despite the highly competitive nature of the Bundesliga. No other goals to report. I say the action slowed down. We've had so many in the second half already. Of course, gearing up for a game to start right now at Balaidos. Celta Vigo versus Villarreal has just kicked off. I'll give you some sporadic updates throughout that game, although of course we will not be covering the full 90 minutes. Return to my Spanish football friend Luke Edwards, and that was an in-betweeners quote if ever I've heard one. Thank you. Yeah, thanks Luke, shut up. La Liga 2020 is back, as we know.
What a goal.
Oh, hello. What timing is that?
I love this game. Oh my word! As Evan Ndicka, the centre back, has just smashed one in from 25 yards. It's an absolute bullet. I'm gonna have to get replay of this. The ball, yeah. So it was picked up on the edge of the area, and it had to like half clear it. Da Costa picks up the ball, Staunton's around a couple of players, and they kind of half clear it, but it doesn't really happen. Grujic and Pekaric try to get to the ball, but the ball falls. It just sets itself up so nicely for Evan Ndicka. And left-footed, he kind of cuts across it, but when he does so, he catches it absolutely perfectly. And it just fires into the bottom corner. It's such a well-struck shot. Absolutely no chance for Rina Jarstein to get a hand on it. And we've been blessed with some good goals in this game, Joe. It's been unbelievable. Yes, 3-1 Frankfurt, game over. Whew, yeah, that was a delicious goal. Absolutely wonderful goal.
See, I want to say you've got the game of the day, but it seems like we've got crackers all across the Bundesliga.
Yeah,
Union Berlin putting on a
this has
shock.
been one of the best in terms of games I watch, and I'm a neutral when I watch it. This has been one of the best games I've watched in a very long time. I'm really enjoying this one.
Yeah, and of course, games across the Bundesliga as well. Wolfsburg versus Freiburg, 2-2. Paderborn versus Werder Bremen, by all accounts, an actually really enjoyable game, despite the conditions in North Rhine-Westphalia this afternoon. Plenty of news across the Bundesliga, of course. Evan Ndicka, the 75th best under-23 player in the world, according to Eurozone football blog last summer. Yeah, Luke, shut up. I wrote an article. I'm allowed to plug it.
A dissertation, not an article, Joe.
Yeah, but to be fair, it was about as long as my dissertation equivalent that I've just submitted this week. Nonetheless, Evan Ndicka getting on the score sheet, and from what it sounds like, Reddit is going to be blessed with 2 fantastic Eintracht Frankfurt goals this afternoon. I mean, I want to say I don't even think this game is. Maybe the game's over in terms of result, but I still feel like Eintracht could score again as well, and the same goes for either Werder Bremen or Paderborn in the other game. I don't think we're through with action this afternoon whatsoever, and we're certainly not in the other games. Who would have thought that the game that would have been goalless with 15 minutes to go was Dusseldorf versus Borussia Dortmund? Goodness me! Well, thank you very much for that, Luke Edwards. Defining perfect timing going to Luke Edwards the moment that Evan Ndicka hammers home Eintracht Frankfurt's fantastic third goal of the afternoon. Just to see how Celta Vigo are getting on over at Balaidos, of course, they play Villarreal this afternoon, only 2 minutes in so far. The lineups that we reported on earlier seem to have converted, well, there's been no injuries in the warm-ups by the looks of things. These teams have taken the pitch. Impossible to get stats for the first couple of minutes because we're only 2 minutes into the game. But worth pointing out, of course, for Celta Vigo, if you think they're the underdogs, some of the players that they have on the bench, Okay Yokuşlu, Turkish international, Denis Suarez, don't mention him to Arsenal fans, Francisco Beltran, Fyodor Smolov, who, in fairness, has been pretty bad under lockdown. That's a story for another day, I think, all the stuff that he's done. And Piona Sisto out wide. This is a team that has an awful lot of attacking firepower against a team that was described as basically free scoring earlier in the season, Villarreal. I want to go to someone to calm down from the news this afternoon, but if I go to Luke James, there's a good chance that another goal is going to come in the next 2 minutes, such is the nature of the rain-swept conditions at the Bentella Arena. How have things gone since Paderborn's goal? Have they gotten back into the game? Have Werder Bremen calmed down a little bit, or is this still just a fantastically entertaining bit of Bundesliga football?
It's been a really fun game to watch. To be honest, Paderborn have had a couple of really good chances, to be fair. A couple of minutes ago, Zielinski was slid through kind of into the 18-yard box, and Pavlenka made a really, really good save low to with his feet close range. So that was really impressive to see from the goalkeeper once again. And the difference between the two sides is Werder Bremen have scored their opportunities. Werder Bremen probably would have scored that opportunity. Paderborn have seen them saved or they've missed. And ultimately, Pavlenka has been one of the standout players once again for Werder Bremen. It's a huge difference, especially when you're fighting relegation in this way, to have a goalkeeper who, once again, is able to come up with big saves. So, yeah, it's followed the same pattern. Paderborn have had chances, but they've never really looked that confident in front of goal.
I mean, we've talked all season, really. I was predicting Werder Bremen would finish about 6th at the beginning of the year, looking at how good their defensive players are, at least on paper, looking at the depth of their midfield and the good players they've got, the surprising amount of decent strikers the team has, despite a lot of them being quite senior in age, excluding, of course, Josh Sargent. You know, it feels like this is a rare opportunity this afternoon to see what Werder Bremen could have been at the start of the season before, of course, the Bundesliga just became incredibly competitive throughout the year. Going on from this, we don't know what the result's going to be over on the banks of the Rhine, Düsseldorf versus Dortmund just yet. On a performance like this, do you think Werder Bremen's chances of survival just increased massively?
Yes. So if you look at the fixtures they've got left, they've got Bayern Munich next week at home, which is, to be honest, a total write-off. Bayern Munich are going to win that comfortably. And into the final 2 weeks of the season, they face Mainz away and Köln at home. And the situation that Werder Bremen have had, they've not won at home. I think it's in 11 or 14 games. It's something like that. They're not good at home. They're better away. Once again, of course, they're winning 4-1 on the road this afternoon. Paderborn. If you look at the fixtures, Mainz is a huge game because at the start of the day, Mainz are in 15th possession on 91 points. So they're not a team that are miles ahead of the relegation battle. They're a team that kind of realistically Düsseldorf or Werder Bremen could catch up with. And you look at the teams in terms of the fixtures that they have around the Mainz before the end of the season. Wolfsburg today, they've got Borussia Dortmund next week. The week after that, they have them. And on the final day of the season, they face Bayer Leverkusen, Fortuna Düsseldorf, of course, Dortmund today. Next week, they face Leipzig. Then they have Wolfsburg and Union Berlin. And there's winnable games for all of those teams. So as we go into the season, it's going to be really interesting to see which side can scrap out and manage to stay up. And if you look at the standings in the second division, Arminia Bielefeld have been, I've watched them quite a lot, just kind of out of interest. Very, very defensive. They're top of the list at the minute by about 5 points, given kind of the game in hand that they have. They keep drawing, but they'll probably win the league. And then behind them, you have Stuttgart and Hamburg. One of those will go up automatically. One of them will have the promotion relegation playoff. And whichever team, kind of whether it's Mainz, Düsseldorf, or Werder Bremen, that's in the relegation playoff, will have quite a tough time, because Hamburg are in moments of very, very good, wouldn't look out of place in the Bundesliga this season, and Stuttgart have a few really decent players. So whatever happens, whichever team is kind of in the playoff, it will be so interesting to watch, because anything could happen.
Going to be an incredibly competitive end to the season, even after the actual Bundesliga has finished. Because, like you say, I mean, I still can't believe Arminia Bielefeld are at the top of the Zweite Bundesliga. It would be one hell of a return. Because, of course, I believe the last season that they were in the Bundesliga was, incidentally, the season where Wolfsburg won the Bundesliga. When, what's his name? Felix Magath was the manager. Luke and I covered that. Luke Edwards, I should say. And I covered that a few weeks ago on the Eurozone Football Podcast. A truly iconic season in the history of German football. Like I say, Arminia Bielefeld could be about to return to the Bundesliga alongside Hamburg, who've only been out of the Bundesliga for about, 2 years of their entire history. So potentially huge stories coming out from the Zweite Bundesliga. Again, if you do not follow Luke James and indeed RAW Sport on social media, get onto them, because they've been covering the Zweite Bundesliga extremely closely. I'll say they've been covering it. Luke James in particular has been incredibly detailed with it. Luke Edwards, we covered, of course, Arminia Bielefeld a long time ago, but we're not talking about them this afternoon. We're talking Bundesliga. It just seems to me that this game, Hertha Berlin took the lead in the first half, looked pretty damn good. It looked like their big money signing, Christoph Piontek, was playing well. Then they make a massive mistake towards the end of the first half, not a metaphor for appointing Jurgen Klinsmann at all, and have completely bottled it. So aside from that, Labadi has actually been a great manager so far, but it seems like, just like their entire season, so much promise in this Hertha Berlin side, so much investment, and yet it just hasn't worked today at all.
It hasn't worked. I think bottling it would be harsh. That's a really harsh way of putting it, because that would
there's a difference. They've bottled a one-goal lead.
It implied that they were far ahead in the first place. They weren't. They were probably slightly the worse off of the two sides in the first half. The sending off was unfortunate, I think. I think that Dost scores if he goes for an goal regardless. So, but Boyata doesn't intentionally take him down. He gets sent off. They can't complain about it, but it is unfortunate. And since then, it's just allowed Frankfurt to take over the game. And you've also got to consider with Hertha that, these Frankfurt goals have not been really by Hertha mistakes at all. The first one came from, yes, a slight bit of disorganisation at the back, but again, that was caused by the Boyata sending off. You can assume that when you've got two strikers of the quality of Andre Silva and Bastos, that they're going to take advantage of it in some way, particularly when there's a little bit of disorganisation caused by the personnel changes. And then the other two goals weren't even, mistakes. These were incredible pieces of play from two Frankfurt players. The first case from Kamada rather. In the Kamada in the left winger for Eintracht Frankfurt. He danced his way past three Hertha defenders who didn't really do anything wrong. He just had that extra bit of quick feet that he hadn't really shown all game. He was able to get past them, and then Andre Silva with a beautifully improvised finish to just get them ahead in the game. And then the third goal, you really can't do anything about. They nearly cleared it, and on another day, and Ditchka sends that flying into Rosed, but he just manages to catch it so sweetly that it plants into the bottom corner. It's been a really good day for Frankfurt. I think Adi Hütter is going to be absolutely thrilled with how they performed. They really deserve this win. It's not been a matter of Hertha playing bad. They haven't played badly at all. They've just struggled having gone down to 10 men, and with a couple of bits of genius play from Eintracht Frankfurt. I said that Andre Silva should have really made it 4-1 to Frankfurt just then. Balls played through to him again by Kamada, and it was by Kostic rather, who's been a massive threat all game, one of my players of the match. He picks up the ball and he just doesn't get his first touch right, and the ball runs through kindly to Runa Jarstein. But yeah, Eintracht, really good value for the win today. They've been so much fun to watch. Hertha, you say it's a matter of them bottling it. It's really not been the case. They've gotten unlucky today. They've come up against the Frankfurt side that just seemed to be very on it, and they've had the sending off, which was also very unlucky for them. It's as simple as that. They'll go again next week. Boyta's only going to be suspended for one match, so they'll be able to have him for the last couple of games of the season. But not the best day at the office for them. It's more of a write-off and just a bit of an unlucky game.
An unlucky game, and let's not forget. I don't think it's fair to say Hertha were good in the first half. It doesn't sound
they were,
like
absolutely.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah,
this has been an incredible performance by Eintracht Frankfurt. I've absolutely enjoyed watching them today. The two wing backs in particular, Da Costa and Kostic, so good. Delivery's perfect. They've got trickery. They're good defensively. Their crossing has been on point. Those two players are really good fun to watch, and Frankfurt just seem to have eaten their Weetabix and shown up. Hertha, I mean, they were competing with this Frankfurt side in the first half. It was largely even, and they were even able to get the goal and go ahead through Piontek. But it's literally just been the red card that's kind of ruined their game for them.
Red card and, of course, two fantastic goals, which we can expect to see on r/soccer later this evening. Luke Edwards reporting on the game from the Olympiastadion this afternoon. I mean, the result may be no longer in doubt, but there's still the potential for goals. I dare say on either side in this game. More likely Eintracht Frankfurt, but still a good day at the office for Eintracht Frankfurt. And I'd still say a decent performance from what I've seen from Bruno Labbadia's side. Definitely the best manager that Hertha have had this year. It's funny that we have already got three managers to choose from for them. We'll come to you in a few minutes, Luke. You've still got quite a lot of the game to go. I'll just run you through the scores quickly in the 5 Bundesliga games that we're covering. Düsseldorf versus Dortmund, goalless still. I'm not going to rant about it, but my goodness me, if you'd asked me to predict which game was going to be goalless this afternoon, it would not have been that one. FC Köln currently 2 goals down at home to Union Berlin, who look pretty good value for the victory as well, playing in about the most Union Berlin way possible. Clinical, fast on the counter-attack, minimal possession, but still getting the goals where it counts against a team similarly placed in the table. At the Volkswagen Arena, Wolfsburg, they truly have bottled it this afternoon, going to even 3 goals up, of course, before Ginczek's was disallowed by VAR, and then conceding twice to SC Freiburg. Freiburg's goals coming from Lucas Huller and Roland Salai in the 43rd and 46th minutes. Since then, no goals, but another potential dent in Wolfsburg's guaranteed Europa League campaign next year. As Luke's been covering, Hertha Berlin 3-1 down at the Olympiastadion following the unfortunate sending off of Dedrick Boyata in the first half. Goals from Eintracht Frankfurt for Bas Dost, Andre Silva, and the centre-back Evan Ndicka, so goals all over the pitch, not to mention Christoph Piontek getting the first goal, and a lovely goal by all accounts for Hertha Berlin in between at least three Eintracht Frankfurt defenders. And finally, the game at the Bentella. We'll bring Luke James back into the stream. It is still 4-1. Werder Bremen leading the home side Paderborn at the moment. We've got about 3 minutes to go, plus injury time. Have we seen all the substitutes so far, or is it a case of Werder can basically just cruise at this point and rest players?
I think we might have a goal left for both sides, but they won't make much of an impact anyway. This has the look of a game that really is kind of between a team that has, for all intents and purposes, probably been relegated today and a team who are desperate to kind of get out of the relegation scrap. There's been kind of pushes and shoves of the place in the second half, which is a bit of a shame to see, but it kind of speaks to the level of competition in the bottom of the Bundesliga at the moment. But yeah, it's kind of winding down. Both teams at this point look like they're going to get the 4-1 victory for Werder Bremen.
Yeah, and I think I dare say for a neutral as well, not to criticise Paderborn at all, because I actually think, considering the quality of their squad, how they came into the Bundesliga, I don't think they've done too badly this year. I think everyone was expecting them to finish at the bottom, certainly since lockdown. Well, since the Bundesliga's return behind closed doors conditions, 4 draws in the last 5 games, far from unimpressive for them. Not least against the quality of teams that they've gotten draws against. Let's not forget that they've drawn. Well, they definitely drew against Leipzig. I didn't write down the others, unfortunately. But there is a case to say that a Werder victory this afternoon suits the neutral a little bit more. It means that the second place relegation, well, the fight in the relegation playoff, and of course the 17th position in the Bundesliga, it's a lot more likely that Werder Bremen are able to convert a win today into a survival push at the end of the season. Is it fair to say that if Paderborn had won this afternoon at home, they probably wouldn't have survived either way, because I think they would be a couple of points off safety?
Yeah, definitely. So if you look at Paderborn's fixtures, they have, of course, Werder Bremen off that. They have Union Berlin away in Berlin. Then in the final 2 games of the season, they face Borussia Mönchengladbach at home and Frankfurt away. So if we're being completely honest, had they beaten Werder Bremen, they would have desperately needed a win against Union Berlin. And to be honest, Union Berlin versus Paderborn has a draw absolutely written all over it. I couldn't have seen either team kind of going all out in that one. So yeah, it probably would have been a situation where Paderborn and Werder Bremen went down. But with the fact now that Werder Bremen look as though they are going to get the win for one at the moment, it's going to be really interesting. I've already kind of mentioned this, but next week they face Bayern Munich. I think Bayern Munich could potentially win the title either this weekend or next weekend. So Bayern will probably, if we're being completely kind of transparent about it, steamroll Werder Bremen next weekend. But after that, Mainz and Köln, both teams that kind of have high and lows. It will be really, really interesting. Werder Bremen have a really big opportunity if they are able to keep their players fit, which since the restart they have been able to do so. And if they stick with this system, I would really fancy them, really do fancy them away against Mainz. I think they've got enough of them to probably maybe get a victory there. And if you look at Fortuna Düsseldorf, next weekend they face Leipzig, the weekend after they face Wolfsburg, and on the final weekend of the season they face Union Berlin. So the 2 teams directly involved in the scrap to kind of either automatically go down or be in the relegation playoff have a couple of winnable games before the end of the season. It's going to be such an interesting watch.
Yeah, and that's before we even get into the situation at the top of the Zweite Bundesliga as well. I mean, the relegation playoff maybe not so much, but it's still all to play for in terms of who actually gets promoted at the moment. Of course, Bielefeld leading the table. I think very few of us would have expected that at the beginning of the season. Maybe they would be another Paderborn this year, but hell, it's one hell of a good story to watch going into the Bundesliga next year. We'll swap out the Lukes for a moment. Luke James covering the game between Paderborn and Werder Bremen. Luke Edwards. Has there been another goal?
It has, yeah. Andre Pofert 4-1 up now against 10-man Hertha Berlin. Goal coming, second goal of the game from Andre Silva. This one's, it's a very nice finish. Ball played through by Stefan Ilsanker. His centre back has just been booked after fouling Matej Cunha, who has been brought on for Hertha Berlin. But yeah, Ilsanker just plays the ball through. It's a really nice run from Andre Silva, gets in between the 2 centre-backs, and fires well beyond Jarstein. Jarstein, I feel bad for. He hasn't really had a chance at any of the goals today. Just another one to kind of put the icing on the cake. It's a really good goal for Andre Silva. It's his 10th of the season, taking him up to double figures. He's been, I think it's not too far to say that he's been a success at Eintracht this season. They kind of needed a player like him brought in after they lost all 3 of their main players in the summer. He's been really good today. And I think, if nothing else, this will just give Frankfurt that little bit of confidence going into next season. It's been a really turbulent year for them as a club and as a team. There's a lot of things that Adi Hütter has had to deal with. But he's managed to pull them together and produce a very good performance today against, admittedly, a very strong Hertha Berlin side that has been weakened by the sending off. A good side nonetheless.
And a fantastic afternoon as well for Andre Silva. 2 goals going up to 10 goals total in the table. Still 4 below Ruven Hennings at Fortuna Düsseldorf. But a good story for Eintracht Frankfurt this year, of course, losing, as Luke said, their 3 main players up front, Jovic, Aller and Ante Rebic going to AC Milan. Of course, every single one of those players has been drastically misused by the clubs that they've joined. Luke James, has there been something else happening at the Benteler Arena in the last few minutes?
Yeah, so I when we spoke before the stream, I don't think we had this down as a 6-goal thriller. It has, however, transpired So Werder Bremen have scored once again, and I think we've just time up. So full-time whistle has gone. SC Paderborn 1, Werder Bremen 5 is the full-time score. So a huge win for Werder Bremen in this one. So the goal, again, it was a really nice finish. It was good possession play inside Paderborn's half. The ball was picked up by Marco Friedel, who kind of came on bench about 10-15 minutes ago. A nice run from Niklas Füllkrug, and it's a great finish. He kind of puts it into the bottom right-hand corner of the goal. It's one of the shots where he hit it as cleanly as he liked. The goalkeeper probably would have saved it. He scuffed it a little bit, and it's gone right into the bottom corner. And yeah, when they scored, the whole of the Werder Bremen team ran over to the bench to celebrate with the manager. Yeah, they looked delighted. It's a huge win for them. Of course, it brings them now on to 28 points, which, depending on what happens in Dusseldorf or in the Borussia Dortmund match, will be huge at the bottom of the table.
And you've talked about the importance of goalkeepers in this game, of course. Jiri Pavlenka putting in a fantastic performance for Werder Bremen. 4 shots on target for Paderborn today. Only one of them went in. Werder Bremen, final shots on target for the game, 5. 5 goals from just 5 shots on target. If people don't believe goalkeepers are crucial when it comes to relegation 6-pointers, this game just absolutely disproves them. Only a modest advantage in possession as well. But it looks like Florian Kohfeldt's side, after this, surely they've got some real momentum behind them to go and survive for another season in the Bundesliga.
They've got huge momentum after this. And the thing is as well, I've watched Werder Bremen the last, I think this is the third week in a row where I've watched Werder Bremen. And in none of the weeks have they looked like relegation fodder. They've always looked like a team who have the quality, who have the ability, who have kind of the hunger to survive anyway. And they've just been undone on so many occasions by silly mistakes at the back, by not picking up the man. And this has been a really professional performance for them. And I think what was so important today is that once they got the goal, they kept going. Last weekend, it was 0-0 for so long in the game on Sunday, where they kept retreating. They kept kind of sitting back deeper and deeper. And it cost them. And today they're on the front foot. It was 50% possession each, as you say. 20 shots in total for Paderborn versus 11 shots in total for Werder Bremen. Of course, many of those off target. But Bremen will take so much confidence from this victory, because if you look at the relegation battle as well, next week is a free match for all of the teams involved, because Mainz away at Dortmund, Dusseldorf are away at Leipzig, and Werder Bremen at home against Bayern Munich. None of those teams are going to expect to pick up any next weekend. So if by some kind of miracle Bayern Munich do drop points next weekend, it will be huge into the run-in. And that Mainz game in a couple of weeks' time is just going to season-defining match at the bottom of the table.
And we've got some more news coming in, pertinent especially to Werder Bremen. First of all, FC Köln versus Union Berlin has finished. In the 93rd minute, Jean Cordoba scoring for FC Köln. Ultimately, nothing more than a consolation. Union Berlin picking up yet another impressive victory on the road in their first season in the Bundesliga. But better yet for Werder Bremen, in the 96th minute at the Esprit Arena, Erling Braut Haaland netting home for Borussia Dortmund in a surprisingly muted performance. Only 4 shots on target for each side, but Dortmund picking up the win. I believe that now puts Werder Bremen level on points with Dusseldorf going into the next phase of the season. We've talked about I think it's fair to say Werder Bremen don't look like a team that could go down at the moment, and despite looking good, first of all today and of course last week in the game against Hoffenheim, Dusseldorf could just be about to get wrapped into an automatic relegation place. Luke Edwards, I'm bringing you onto the screen as well. Game is finished over in Berlin, 4 goals to 1. Eintracht Frankfurt the winners. A dominant performance in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely stunning performance, to be honest, from Eintracht Frankfurt today. They have been nigh on impeccable, particularly in the second half. They've taken advantage of the 10 men on behalf of Hertha very well. Bringing on Andre Silva was a bit of a masterstroke. I say it's masterstroke seems like a fairly obvious thing to do, but the fact that Adi Hutter went and did that is a big deal. It completely disrupted that centre-back partnership, the makeshift centre-back partnership of, I believe it was Stark and Torino Riga after Boyata was sent off. Andre Silva's come on and he 2 shots on target rather, 2 goals, absolutely clinical on behalf of his level of play. First goal that he scored, just a really neat finish with the back heel after a great bit of work from Kamada. And then the second goal, ball came through from Stefan Ilsanka, really good run, just gets himself in behind the Hertha backline and finishes expertly beyond Rune Jarstein. Hertha will feel a little bit unlucky, I think. I don't think they'll feel hard done by. I think they'll know that it was a sending off and that Eintracht have played quite well today. But I think they'll feel unlucky that Boyata was sent off in the first place. It wasn't a deliberate trip on Bastos whatsoever. So the fact that he was sent off because of it is going to be frustrating. That being said, there's still positives they can take from today. Matej Cunha back in the lineup. He came off the bench and was relatively positive, added a little bit of energy into the side when they were flagging a little bit. So they'll be delighted to have him back. And you got the other positive of Krzysztof Piątek scoring yet another goal. This is his 4th goal in a Hertha Berlin shirt, which is a massive deal for him. No, I don't think there'll be any real complaints with the score today. Deserved winners are Eintracht Frankfurt. I think they were absolutely superb today and have scored some wonderful goals. It's been a really good and enjoyable match to watch. And that is all I have to say on it. Congratulations, Frankfurt. Commiserations to Hertha. I'm sure they'll go again next week.
Professional away performances from two sides who had hitherto been having difficult seasons in the Bundesliga. I believe that basically brings us to an end of RAW Sport Quaran-Stream for this weekend. Thank you very much to Luke Edwards and Luke James for covering the game so fantastically over in Germany this afternoon. 5 games, 19 goals in the Bundesliga this afternoon. A final update for the game in Spain. It's goalless. However, Villarreal already have 4 shots on target, so it looks like Celta Vigo are under a hell of a lot of pressure over in Galicia. We'll be returning on Thursday next week. Josh Sim has got a big interview lined up. I'm not allowed to spoil who it is, but fair to say, when he told me who it was, my jaw almost hit the floor. I can't believe he's pulled it off. Stay tuned to our socials to follow that. Thank you very much. Joe Spagnoli, Luke Edwards and Luke James for RAW Sport Quaran-Stream.